Chapter 202. The scene of Wu Qi killing Yu Su, the son of Yu Yi, filled the drill ground with a dead silence. The mighty overall strength he had shown had even raised the eyebrows of everyone. Apart from Yen Dan and a few others who knew the origin of his Jin Dan realm cultivation base, the rest of the nobles were whispering to each other, discussing how Wu Qi, a mere Xiantian Taoist, could suddenly possess the overall strength of Jin Dan realm. Some well-informed people even linked the overall strength of Wu Qi's Jin Dan realm cultivation base with the thunderbolts that suddenly struck Zhang Le Park. They believed that Wu Qi had transcended the thunder tribulation in Zhang Le Park and formed the Jin Dan realm. While all the nobles and ministers of Great Yan Dynasty were busy exchanging all kinds of information, Yen Dan's voice echoed through the drill ground, "Lao Ai, I can confer you the title of king. If you have the guts, why don't you follow Yen Dan to the inner palace and have a detailed discussion? Since Wu Qi has won, not only have you lost a huge bet, before Ing Zheng is killed, you, Lao Ai, will also be Jin Dan's man." Lao Ai, whose face was unsightly because of Wu Qi's victory, suddenly threw his head back and laughed wildly. "Don't have the guts to go? Lao Ai, are you really that timid? Fine, so what if Lao Ai is your man before Ing Zheng is killed? He he." After laughing evilly in a strange tone for a while, Lao Ai pointed his finger at Wu Qi and said coldly, "Kid, you are not bad. I just can't see through you in the imperial court of Great Yan Dynasty. Interesting. Holding the spear with both hands, Wu Qi cupped his fist and bowed to Lao Ai. "You flatter me, Prince of Chongqing. In the future, I'll be your minister, and I hope Prince of Chongqing can take good care of me." He paused for a brief moment, then grinned coldly and said, "Wu Qi's body is weak, and I can't withstand the torrential storm. If Prince of Chongqing wants to deal with someone in the future, please don't find trouble with Wu Qi, or it will not be good for Wu Qi, and it will not be good for you either." Lao Ai narrowed his eyes, his face darkening as he cried out furiously, "Are you threatening me?" Wu Qi sneered and said, "Yes. I'm threatening you." Lao Ai turned to look at Yen Dan and grinned, "Look, Yen Dan, is this kid threatening me?" Yen Dan glanced coldly at Lao Ai and said in a low voice, "Tonight is a grand banquet in the imperial palace. All the civil and military officials of the imperial court and all the ministers of the imperial clan must attend it. Except for the generals who are leading the army, those who are absent will be punished with the crime of great disrespect. According to the decree of alchemy, Yu Su's remains were to be collected and buried with the honors of a marquis. While you're at it, confer Lao Ai the title of Prince of Chongqing of Great Yan Dynasty, ranking above all the other kings. Although he has the title of nobility, he won't have any land." After letting out 3 loud laughs, Yen Dan extended his hand toward the palace and gestured, "Prince of Chongqing, please. Lao Ai was indeed a peerless evil man. He did not take the conflict between him and Wu Qi to heart, but just threw his head back and laughed wildly into the sky. His long hair fluttered rapidly in the cold wind, and his eyes shone with an evil gleam. Abruptly, he transformed into a wild gust of wind and sped towards Yen Dan. While he was still in midair, Lao Ai had already thrust his fist forcefully towards Yen Dan. Yen Dan let out a wild laugh as well. All of a sudden, a grayish-white airflow rose from his back, as he too raised his right fist and thrust it towards Lao Ai. Both fists collided soundlessly. Yen Dan and Chi were knocked flying back while coughing blood. Their clothes were ripped apart at the same time, and the skin on their right fists was ripped to shreds. Both fists were dripping with blood, looking like 2 bloody gourds. Both men exchanged a glance, laughed wildly once again, then flew back into the imperial palace hand in hand. Wu Qi crossed his arms before his chest, tilted his head and looked at Yen Dan and Lao Ai, who were flying far away. He murmured under his breath, "What an ambiguous behavior these 2 men have. Tiske, could it be that they have the hobbies of men?" Suddenly, a gentle and elegant voice with a tinge of mystery was heard. "His Majesty does not have those hobbies. Duke of Tianyun, Wu Qi, congratulations on getting such a great reward for you. In a short period of time, no one in the imperial court will dare to offend you. Su Qin has prepared some fine wine and some appetizers for you today. I wonder if I can have the honor? Wu Qi was taken aback. He quickly turned his head and sure enough, it was Su Qin and Mod who were standing behind him. Laughing dryly, Wu Qi quickly cupped his fist and said, "Since Senior has invited me, Wu Qi dares not to decline. Please wait for a moment." Turning, Wu Qi turned to Jing Ku, who had transformed into a white beam and was flying over his head, heading towards the inner palace. "Chief General, since you've won so many things today, you have to share them with me. Or else, I'll tell all the civil and military officials in Great Yan Dynasty that it was you who helped me cheat, allowing me to forcefully form Jin Dan, which gave me the overall strength to control the acquired spirit pearls and kill Yusu. It was you who ordered me to kill Yusu." Wu Qi's voice was loud and clear, and everyone in the drill ground could hear it loud and clear. Many influential members of the nobility trembled, nodding their heads thoughtfully and exchanging glances with each other. Just as they had expected. If not for the support from Chief General Jing Ku, how could Wu Qi, a young lad who had just sneaked into Great Yan Dynasty, have the courage to compete with the people from Yu Clan? TSK, Chief General Jing Ku had ordered the murderer to kill the youngest son of General Yu. Even those influential members of the nobility who had just lost all their belongings were excited. This news was too sensational. The white beam of light transformed from Jing Ku nearly fell down from the sky. A gloomy curse was heard coming down from the sky. Along the way, Jing Ku kept murmuring something and flew straight into the inner palace. Su Qin and Mod stared at Wu Qi, unable to say a word for a long while. When Wu Qi turned his head back excitedly, Mod shook his head and said, "You little rascal. It was supposed to be a peaceful affair, but you just had to mess it up. After being yelled at by you, it is impossible for you not to fight with Jing Ku. Don't look for me for these troublesome matters. Don't look for me." With a wave of his sleeve, Mod disappeared soundlessly from where he stood, not emitting even the slightest ripple of energy. Wu Qi's heart skipped a beat. Mod's cultivation base had actually reached such a level? It was not something that could be seen during normal times. At this moment, Princess Zhonglu had brought a large group of guards and rushed over excitedly. From a distance, she sprung into the air and hugged Wu Qi's arm. Meanwhile, Su Qin smiled at Princess Zhonglu, shook his head and said, "Princess, I've decided on Duke of Tianyun. He wants to accompany me to my mansion for a talk." "I'm sorry, Duke of Tianyun can't accompany Princess today. There will be a palace banquet in the evening, and Princess can still meet Duke of Tianyun at that time." Su Qin let out a loud laugh, grabbed Wu Qi's shoulder, and with a blink of his body he brought Wu Qi to the palace gate. Wu Qi had no idea how Su Qin brought him away, while Princess Zhonglu was staring blankly at Wu Qi, who had suddenly disappeared from her arms. Suddenly, she stamped her feet and murmured, Old man Su, next time I'll burn down your cottage. You old fool, you only know how to bully the younger generation. Next time I'll bring Su Xiaosu to a brothel and ask her to sing a little song. Let's see if your heart aches for your little granddaughter." Outside the palace gate, Wu Qi took over a black cloak handed to him by Su Qin. With a pat from Su Qin, the armor on his body fell gently to the ground. Both of them put on the black cloak, treading on the thick snow and walking along the street, looking like two commoners at the lowest level of Great Yan Dynasty. Both of them walked at an incredible speed, and in just a short while, they had left Ji City and arrived at the outskirts of the city. The outskirts of Ji City was a boundless snowfield that stretched as far as the eyes could see. Both of them walked along the path that was trodden by pedestrians, carriages, and horses. After walking for 15 minutes, they finally came to a small village. A few stray dogs were running back and forth at the entrance of the village, as if they wanted to enter the village to look for food, but dared not to do so. Su Qin grinned, rolled up his sleeves, grabbed a bowl-thick broken twig from the ground, and tiptoed behind the few stray dogs. Abruptly, he wielded the twig and smashed a black stray dog with a heavy blow. The dog let out a loud howl, then fell to the ground with white foam coming out from its mouth. Su Qin tossed the branch away and grabbed the skin of the stray dog. He let out a long laugh and said, "A delicacy for a guest, what a great favor." The corner of Wu Qi's mouth twitched when he saw that. Subconsciously, he shook his head. He walked forward, took over the stray dog from Su Qin's hand, smiled and asked, "Old mister, do you like this kind of food?" Su Qin turned his head and gave Wu Qi a look, then said, "Don't tell me, what kind of food do you think Su Qin likes? Do I need a few hundred servants to serve me for every meal, and a couple dozens of serving maids to serve me fine wine and delicacies?" Shaking his head, Su Qin smiled and said, "I used to be like that. But now, after living for so many years, I'm getting tired of living. Instead, I've recalled this hobby of mine when I was a teenager." Patting on the black dog in Wu Qi's arms, Su Qin breathed out a long sigh and said, "Over 2,000 years old, damn it, I'm really old." Su Qin chuckled, shook his head, clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly walked into the village. This was an ordinary little village. There were about 500 to 600 households in the village, and all of them were ordinary farmers. Wu Qi's divine sense swept across the people he met on the road. They were all ordinary people. These people seemed to be very familiar with Su Qin. When they saw him, they all smiled and bowed to Su Qin. "Greetings, old master. Have you eaten?" It could be seen that Su Qin was very popular in the village, and no one seemed to know what role he played in the imperial court of the Qin dynasty. As Su Qin walked, he greeted the villagers and said to Wu Qi with a smile, "I'm not used to living in a luxurious mansion. In the last 300 years, I like to live in the village outside the city. On weekdays, I grow my own vegetables, raise pigs, and when I have nothing to do, I catch a few stray dogs and stew them. I also teach my youngest son and granddaughter. It's a happy life." With a smile, Su Qin said mischievously, "I'm really poor and bored. There are 2 widows in the village. They are born with tender skin, and I peep at them bathing in the middle of the night. It's really beautiful." Wu Qi felt his hands tremble. He really couldn't describe Su Qin's behavior. He laughed dryly for a while, then murmured in a low voice, "Old mister has the heart of a child, and this, naive and unaffected. It's really unique taste." Su Qin laughed proudly and led Wu Qi to a yard at the end of the only dirt road in the village. The yard covered an area of about 7 or 8 acres. In front of the house was a flower garden. At the moment, the branches were withered, and there were no flowers at all. Behind the house were a few acres of vegetable fields. There were still some green vegetables that hadn't been harvested yet. They were lying in a mess on the vegetable fields, smashed by the heavy snow. On the left side of the house was a pigsty. A few pigs that were as skinny as monkeys were weakly snorting on the ground. One of the pigs was so hungry that it was gnawing on the wooden fence of the pigsty, letting out a creaking noise. On the right side of the house was a barn. 3 horses, which should be used as mounts, were lying on the ground with their eyes wide open, waiting for death. Judging from the looks of these 3 horses, they hadn't eaten anything for about half a month. They were so hungry that even their skins were drooping. When they saw Su Qin walk into the yard, the 3 horses and the few pigs struggled hard at the same time, then weakly howled a few times at Su Qin. Su Qin stared at these livestock in astonishment. He sighed and said, "I've only been away for a little over a month. How did all of you end up like this? Zhang, you bastard! I asked you to help me feed the livestock. Why are there 3 less pigs and 2 less horses?" A large piece of pig shoulder blade was thrown out from the house. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and walked out from the house listlessly. "What are they called? 3 pigs and 2 horses, they've all been eaten within this 1 month. There's a black dog? Liexin, come out and wash them. Hurry up and stew them. It's not easy for us to come to Great Yan Dynasty. Let's eat a few more livestock. We can consider it as serving Qin and severely weakening the national strength of Great Yan Dynasty." Zhang Yi smiled and narrowed his eyes into 2 fine lines. "If we eat 1 more livestock when the war breaks out in the future, the soldiers of Great Yan Dynasty will have 1 less meal to eat." Liexin answered and walked out from the house. While walking, he was picking his teeth with a dagger. Wu Qi loosened his grip, and the fainted wild dog fell heavily to the ground. So, this was Su Qin's mansion. Chapter 203. When he saw Zhang Yi and Liexin, Wu Qi instinctively touched the spirit-breeding ring on his finger. All his magical treasures and flying swords, including the various talismans in the ring, were ready to be unleashed. Fortunately, he had fed 100 longbow men the ancestral awakening and body-tempering soup, allowing them to form the Jin Dan. Even if Zhang Yi and Li Xian were here, Wu Qi had the confidence to trap them with a formation formed by 100 longbow men. Together with the acquired spirit pearls of 5 elements and all other magical treasures, Wu Qi had the confidence to kill any one of them with a surprise attack. With the confidence in his heart, Wu Qi didn't do anything out of line. He just watched as Li Xian strode towards him, picked up the black dog, and strode to the back of the house. Very soon, the miserable howl of the black dog before its death was heard coming from the back of the house. When Li Xian was doing all this, he didn't even look at Wu Qi. Wu Qi, on the other hand, was staring at Zhang Yi with a straight face. He didn't give Li Xian a second glance either. Instead, he cupped his fist and bowed to Zhang Yi. Jr., Duke of Tianyun of Great Yan Dynasty, Zhang Yi, offers greetings to old Mr. Zhang. I wonder if old Mr. is here to rob something, or to kidnap Princess Zhang Lu and offer her to Yingzheng. Let old Mr. know that this is G City, and old Mr. is getting on in years. If you are not careful, you might lose an arm or a leg. Zhang Yi could not help but laugh. Meanwhile, Su Qin gave Wu Qi a slap and said with a smile, "All right. Come in, they are not here to cause any trouble." Taking off the cloak, Su Qin brought Wu Qi and walked into the house. Su Qin's house looked like an ordinary house in the countryside. It was spacious and empty, without any furnishings. A fire pit was dug right in the middle of the house, and a good charcoal fire was lit in it. A few pieces of animal skins were spread on the ground, and 2 long narrow tables were placed on top of them. The paint on the tables was almost gone. On the back of the house, a few ancestral tablets were placed. But Su Qin's ancestors must have been starving, just like the pigs in his pigsty and the horses in the stable. In the porcelain plate in front of the ancestral tablets, there were only a few moldy and hairy fruit cores. There were a few teeth marks on them. It was obvious that the flesh had been bitten off by mice. The small bronze incense burner next to the porcelain plate was empty, without the slightest bit of incense ash. Presumably, Su Qin had not offered incense to his ancestors for 70 or 80 years. In the corner of the house, there was a messy pile of farm tools. Looking at the rusty appearance of the farm tools, they had not been used for at least 30 to 50 years. Next to the farming tools were several large wicker baskets filled with grains. Wu Qi's eyes were sharp. He saw that the grains were also covered with mouse droppings. Presumably, when the mice were eating in the basket, Su Qin was too lazy to get up and drive them away. The 3 of them knelt next to the fire pit. Su Qin flipped his hand and took out a set of azure-colored fine porcelain tea set from his sleeve. It was speckled with sea blue rain marks. He slowly started to boil water and make tea with the charcoal fire in the fire pit. The water was the supreme-grade spring water from a fine porcelain water jar from under Su Qin's sleeve, and the tea was the supreme-grade tribute tea from a crystal tea jar from under his sleeve. Together with Su Qin's over 2,000 years of tea-making skills, it did not take long for a refreshing aroma of tea to envelop the entire courtyard. Su Qin smiled complacently, then said, "This is the supreme-grade tribute tea. Years ago, for the sake of this tribute tea, I mobilized 3 million Great Yan Navy soldiers and sailed 20,000 miles across the Great Eastern Ocean to attack the kingdom of Feathermen. It took me 3 years to conquer their 738 cities, and force them to offer me 50 kilograms of this supreme-grade spirit tea every 10 years. Su Qin breathed out a long sigh, then continued proudly, "This tea only grows in the 3rd heaven abyss of the kingdom of Feathermen, on the cliffs 80 miles above the ground. It is soaked by the strong wind and rain at high altitudes, and that's how this excellent tea is produced. Only the buds taken from the tongue of virgins under the age of 14 in the kingdom of Feathermen, who have spirit roots, can be made into this wonderful tea. Come, give it a try." Wu Qi took over the teacup handed over by Su Qin and placed it on the table in front of him. He looked at Su Qin, smiled and said, "Kid, you don't like to drink other people's saliva." Su Qin, who was pouring the tea into his mouth, was taken aback, then choked on the tea. After a violent cough, Su Qin threw the tea set out of the door. He stared at Wu Qi and said angrily, "You bastard! What you said has completely ruined this tea." Zhang Yi smiled and also took out a tea set from his sleeve. What he took out was a fine blue porcelain tea set made from sky after rain. It was also a water jar filled with top-grade mountain spring water. He slowly made tea. As he worked, he smiled and said, "This tea is also the tribute tea of the Daqin. The tea is fragrant and can greatly replenish vitality. Only on the battlefield where millions of people have been killed and the blood-fiendish battle energy gathered can such good tea be nourished. The people who pick the tea are not those delicate little women. They must be elite warriors with strong vitality. Only the tea picked can strengthen vitality, nourish vitality, strengthen muscles and bones, and replenish bone marrow." Su Qin turned his head to look at Wu Qi and said coldly, "This imperial preceptor of the Daqin dynasty is showing off in front of us. What do you have to say about this tea?" After a moment of silence, Wu Qi said with drooping eyelids, "Burning the zither and boiling the crane, it really spoils the mood. This kid doesn't have the heart to say it." Su Qin angrily smashed the table next to him. He said angrily, "You've already burned my crane, so you have to stew Zhang Yi's crane for me." Zhang Yi looked up at the sky and laughed. "But my crane is not afraid of you, stew it. How are you going to stew this kind of ling tea nourished by the blood energy of the battlefield?" Looking at the proud Zhang Yi, Wu Qi said lightly, "Only on the battlefield where millions are killed can this ling tea take root and grow. But after killing millions, before people die, their feces and urine will flow, and the ground will be covered in feces and urine. Is it the blood energy of the people that nourishes this ling tea? Or is it the ling tea that absorbs the smell of feces and urine to form this ling tea? No one knows." Wu Qi is not willing to drink urine. Silence. Su Qin put his hands under his sleeves, raised his head and looked at the ceiling, falling into a gloomy silence. Zhang Yi's face twisted, his mouth twitching as he stared at Wu Qi. After a full quarter of an hour, he slowly picked up all the tea sets and threw them out of the room. Trembling, he looked at Wu Qi, snorted coldly and said, "Burning the zither and boiling the crane, there is no one better than you who spoils the mood under the heaven. You little brat, with just a few words, you have destroyed 2 magical items in the world." Wu Qi sighed lightly. From the black dragon spirit ring, he fished out 3 wine jars made of black clay and handed one to each of the 2 old men. Opening the jar and taking 2 mouthfuls of the wine, Wu Qi shook his head and said, "I destroyed these 2 magical items? You've been drinking them for over 1,000 years, 2,000 years, so what if you keep drinking them? It's just that you can't stand the devil in your heart." After taking a few mouthfuls of wine, Wu Qi stared at Zhang Yi, sneered and said, "All right, old Mr. Zhang Yi, what are you doing here? That day, I saw you and old Mr. Su Qin fighting so fiercely. How can you sit here and laugh with each other?" "Su Qin and Zhang Yi are talking and laughing with each other, that is because we are from the same sect. That day, we schemed against each other and wounded each other, that is because we are serving different masters. Personal friendship is personal friendship, and official business is official business. You can't mix them together. After that day, Zhang Yi came to me and asked me to bring you here to discuss something with you. That's why I found the opportunity to bring you here today." Clapping his hands, Su Qin clarified his relationship with Zhang Yi with a few words. "I'm just a pimp. If you have any deal, just tell me." The sound of footsteps was heard as Li Exin walked into the room, carrying a large clay pot. Inside the pot was Chi-Chi's black dog meat. He placed the pot on top of a charcoal fire. The fire was strong, and soon, the cold water in the pot was steaming. Li Exin gave Wu Qi a look, stretched out his hand and said, "Young lad, I remember you. I didn't kill you with 3 arrows, but you're really shameless. How could you use the man you saved as a shield? If you were a soldier of Daqin, you would have been punished by military law." He snorted coldly, then shouted, "I have wine, bring it to me." From his storage ring, Wu Qi pulled out a few urns of wine and placed them next to the fireplace, letting the charcoal fire slowly heat up the wine. Li Exin had already picked up a urn of wine and started gulping it down, not giving Wu Qi another look. Zhang Yi coughed lightly and said slowly, Wu Qi, the purpose of sneaking into Ji City this time is to find out the general strength of Great Yan Dynasty. This is just a mission that is convenient for us. Our other important task is to... Zhang Yi threw a glance at the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, one of the 2 rings on Wu Qi's finger. Currently, Wu Qi was only wearing the Black Dragon Spirit Ring and the Spirit Breeding Ring. All the miscellaneous treasures he had were kept in the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, which contained all his wealth. Upon seeing the strange look in Zhang Yi's eyes, Wu Qi quickly covered the ring with his hand and said with a sneer, What I have now is mine. Even if Ying Zheng wants to take it back, it is impossible. If he wants the ring back, he will have to come and get it himself. Zhang Yi kept shaking his head and said, You can't. His Majesty is severely wounded, and is now recuperating in the palace. In the future, he will bring an army to Ji City, and at that time, he will settle the score with you. The reason why I'm here today is to take back a lacquer box inlaid with gold from the ring. Wu Qi quickly scanned the Black Dragon Spirit Ring with his divine will. Without needing Wu Qi to search for the item spirit, the Black Dragon item spirit had spat out the small lacquer box, measuring about 2 feet in length and width and 1 foot in height. It was an exquisite and luxurious lacquer box inlaid with gold. Wu Qi placed the box on the ground before him, pressed one of his hands on its surface, looked at Zhang Yi, smiled and said, This is the box, right? Tell me what is inside. Zhang Yi gave the box a deep look, then said in an indifferent tone, It is the belongings left behind by His Majesty and the Empress. Some jewelry, a few pieces of clothing, and a personal letter left behind by the Empress to His Majesty many years ago. He sent his divine will into the box, and sure enough, they were all ordinary items that did not possess any natural energy. No wonder Wu Qi didn't notice this box when he was sorting through the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi said in an indifferent tone, For this box, Ying Zheng has sent Imperial Advisor Daqin to Ji City to take the risk? Zhang Yi laughed dryly, nodded his head and said, This box is more important than my head. Of course, with Senior Marshal Brother Su Qin here, although this trip is a little dangerous, I will only suffer some serious injuries at most, and will not be killed. Once again, Su Qin tried to distance himself from Zhang Yi and said, It's not that I don't want to kill you. Even if the current emperor of Great Yan Dynasty sees you, he will only capture you alive, and won't kill you. Hee, public affairs are public affairs, and private affairs are private affairs. I, Su Qin, have never mixed public affairs and private affairs together. Lightly patting on the box, Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, I don't care about your private relations. If you want this box, you'll have to pay me back with benefits. After a brief pause, Wu Qi looked at Zhang Yi with surprise and asked, Speaking of which, as the Emperor of Daqin, his territory is no smaller than Great Yan Dynasty, and he can have as many women as he wants. So, why is the belongings left behind by the Empress so precious? Su Qin remained silent, and he too looked at Zhang Yi curiously. Zhang Yi pondered for a brief moment, then slowly began to speak. Chapter 204. The fire was burning vigorously, and the soup in the pot was boiling, causing the meat of the black dog to roll and writhe in the boiling water. A strong aroma was emanating from the pot. Li Exen licked his lips and carefully tended to the fire. Every now and then, he would take a deep breath and look like he was drooling. The sound of boiling water kept coming from the pot, while large sheets of snowflakes were falling from the outside of the house, landing on the ground and the roof, producing rustling noises. The crowing of cocks and barking of dogs could be heard coming from afar, as well as the greetings of the villagers. It made the house even quieter, and made Zhang Yi's voice sound even more ancient, as if an old ghost who had been dead for several thousand years was talking nonsense. Wu Qi knew the background of Yan Dan, Ying Zheng, and the others. But both Su Qin and Zhang Yi thought that Wu Qi did not know the background of Yan Dan, Ying Zheng, and themselves. Therefore, they omitted many key points in their narration. However, according to the information he knew, Wu Qi had filled in some key details and had roughly restored the original appearance of the incident. According to Zhang Yi, Ying Zheng had a beloved empress, who was the only woman he loved deeply in his life. This woman held a very important place in his heart. Therefore, after the death of the empress, or rather, after her disappearance, Zheng missed her deeply and brought her belongings with him. He often took them out to reminisce about her. The belongings in this chest had become a kind of spiritual sustenance for Zheng. Zheng always wore 2 rings on his finger. One was the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, which stored some of his personal belongings. The other was the White Dragon Spirit Ring, a very powerful spirit item, possessing the power to fight against nascent soul and deity transformation experts. During the battle in Meng Mountains, Wu Qi casually took a ring from Zheng, and it happened to be the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, which stored all of Zheng's personal belongings. Zheng owned the entire Qin dynasty, and although those treasures in the Black Dragon Spirit Ring were precious, he did not care about them. However, the belongings of Zheng's empress were very important to him, and he was willing to pay a high price to retrieve them. On the other hand, Wu Qi's version was much more detailed. As Zhang Yi did not know Wu Qi's background, he had no idea that Wu Qi came from the same place as them. Therefore, although his words were cautious, he was very cautious. However, with Su Qin sighing with him, there were some flaws in his words and some inconspicuous information was leaked. This was enough for Wu Qi to restore the original appearance of the matter. It was the time when Zheng was a hostage in his youth. At that time, Zheng was in dire straits and was constantly bullied and humiliated. That was when he met his future empress. At that time, Zheng was just an ordinary teenager, and the feelings of a teenager were the most sincere. When he was in dire straits, the care and concern of a young girl was enough to make Zheng remember it for the rest of his life. On top of that, Zheng would become an emperor with great talent and bold vision in the future. Not many people could leave a mark on a peerless emperor like him, but once they did, it would be an unforgettable memory. If not for Su Qin sighing with emotion at the hardship of Zheng's youth, Wu Qi would not know that the empress mentioned by Zhang Yi was someone Zheng knew since he was a child. According to the historical records that Wu Qi knew, Zheng was a hostage at that time, and it was a very difficult period. Later on, the girl had been accompanying Zheng, accompanying him back to Qin state, inheriting the throne and seizing the power of Qin state. Initially, Zhang Yi wanted to skip this period of history with just one sentence, but Su Qin was too talkative and began to discuss with Zhang Yi about Zheng's gains and losses during this period. Both of them talked in a very vague way, and if they were people born and raised in this world, they would be fooled by them. But who was Wu Qi? He came from Earth, and Lu Xiaobai knew about this period of history very well. Therefore, the conversation between the two was clearly heard by him. In the process of Zheng taking over the state and seizing the power, Zheng's empress played a very important role. It was she who persuaded all the important ministers of Qin state to support Zheng, and it was she who personally got rid of those who plotted against Zheng. She even helped Zheng survive a few assassination attempts. Without her, Zheng would have long become a pile of meat paste, and he would not be the future emperor of Qin dynasty. For Zheng, this girl was not only his first love when he was young, but also his nanny, bodyguard, advisor, and almost an all-round talent. It was exactly because of her protection and help that Zheng managed to sit on the throne of Qin state with much difficulty. After that, it was also this girl who came up with a plan to lure and kill the rebellious Lao Ai, and forced Lu Buwei, who held the sole power in Qin state, to commit suicide. Because even Su Qin did not know about this period of history, Su Qin interjected very enthusiastically on the side, almost trying to get to the bottom of it in detail. Zhang Yi had no choice but to point out the key points in a very vague way. Therefore, when Su Qin knew the true face of this period of history, so did Wu Qi. In fact, Wu Qi knew more than Su Qin, because Su Qin lived in an era earlier than Zheng, and the historical materials he knew were not as good as Wu Qi. With the help of the empress, Zheng smoothly took control of the Qin dynasty, and with the help of the empress, he successfully unified the world and accomplished his great cause. After his success, Zheng conferred this girl the title of Empress of Qin, and gave her the same power and status as Zheng. However, this girl was so mysterious, and her ambition was not to be a heavenly god. After assisting Zheng to unify the world, this girl wholeheartedly lived in seclusion, practicing the Tao of immortality. Finally, one night, during a thunderstorm, the woman left behind a handwritten letter and disappeared. Since then, Ying Zheng's temperament had changed greatly. He began to get close to alchemists, practitioners, and wholeheartedly seek the Tao of immortality. He even sent Su Fu out to sea to search for the elixir of immortality, not for his own immortality, but to find his empress. Even when he traveled around the world, searching for immortals, conferring titles of dragon kings and immortal spirits, it was all for the sake of finding his empress. Because of the hopelessness of immortality and the excessive longing in his heart, Ying Zheng became more and more brutal in his later years. In just a short period of time, he completely wiped out the foundation of the Deqin dynasty. Su Qin looked up and sighed, sighing for Ying Zheng. Wu Qi was also staring at Zhang Yi, dumbfounded. It turned out that Ying Zheng, the mighty ruler of a dynasty, was actually a man of love. But what kind of girl could make Ying Zheng so infatuated, so unforgettable, and so unforgettable even after 1,000 years? 2,000 years had passed, and Ying Zheng still carried her relic with him, playing with it day and night. Because Wu Qi had stolen the relic, Ying Zheng had even sent out his generals and the imperial advisor of Deqin from far away, just to get the chest back. 10 years of life and death, never thinking, never forgetting, 1,000 miles of lonely grave, no place to talk about desolation. Even if we meet, we should not know each other, a face covered with dust, hair like frost. Last night, a dream suddenly returned home, dressing up by the window, looking at each other without a word, only 1,000 lines of tears. Every year, at the place of heartbreak, on a bright moonlit night, on a short pine hill. Casually plagiarizing a poem of mourning for his dead wife, Wu Qi looked at the falling snow outside the window with a melancholy expression. On the other hand, Su Qin and Zhang Yi were struck dumb by Wu Qi's excellent poem. Both of them kept repeating this plagiarized poem over and over again, their eyes shining brightly. Even Li Exen was staring blankly at Wu Qi with a wine jar in his hand, completely forgetting about the fine wine in the jar. I never thought that His Majesty Ying Zheng, a peerless heaven-chosen one I met in Meng Mountains, is actually such a man of love. Wu Qi admires you, said Wu Qi, raising up the wine jar and gulping down 2 mouthfuls of wine. Looking at Zhang Yi, who was still immersed in the poem, Wu Qi said seriously, I really admire the deep friendship between His Majesty Ying Zheng and the Queen of Deqin. But, as the saying goes, friendship is friendship, and business is business. Although Wu Qi admires the deep friendship between His Majesty Ying Zheng and the Queen of Deqin, it was not easy for me to steal this ring when I was surrounded and intercepted by Deqin's generals. Clearing his throat, Wu Qi shoved the box back into the black dragon spirit ring, then said in an unusually serious tone, without any benefits, even if old Mr. Su Qin can help me, it is impossible for me to hand over this box. Frankly speaking, since this is the relic of His Majesty Ying Zheng and the Queen, I think Wu Qi can give it to Princess Zhang Lu as a precious gift. If His Majesty knows that Wu Qi has given the relic of His Majesty Ying Zheng and the Queen to his granddaughter, I believe he will be very happy. Perhaps he will even give Wu Qi another promotion. Just a moment ago, Zhang Yi was still immersed in the melancholy poem, and when he heard Wu Qi's shameless words, he could not help but shiver. Aren't you afraid of Great Qin's revenge? He cried out furiously. Wu Qi rose to his feet, laughed out loud and said, I am, but this is the capital of Great Yan Dynasty. Even if that old fool Ying Zheng is here, I'll still say the same thing. I can take back the relic of his wife, and I won't take advantage of a dead man. But what about the benefits? Give me the benefits. Without any benefits, don't even think about taking away a single hair from me. Do you believe that if I give a loud shout, several hundred Earth Immortals in G City will rush out and chop you into meat paste? Li Exen had just risen to his feet with a ferocious gleam in his eyes, but when he heard Wu Qi's threat, he sat back down again. Su Qin laughed dryly and said, calm down, don't get angry. Junior brother, if you can take back the relic of Ying Zheng's wife. No, Empress Deqin, it will be a great achievement. Don't be too stingy. I can only keep you here for a few days, and that won't be a problem. If this little fellow really gives a loud shout and provokes those people in G City, I'll leave right away. Don't think that I'll be your scapegoat." Zhang Yi flew into a rage. He glared at Su Qin and said, "What a disloyal man. We are still fellow disciples of the same sect." Su Qin was furious. He glared at Zhang Yi and snorted, "How much is loyalty worth? If you're loyal enough, you shouldn't have eaten half a dog leg more than me in the back mountain when you were learning in the Ghost Valley. I'm the one who hunted that dog, so that half dog leg should belong to me." Zhang Yi said angrily, "You still remember such a trivial matter? Do you remember that you still owe me 3 large sums of money?" Su Qin answered without hesitation, "I've forgotten. I only remember that you still owe me a pair of boots." Both men glared at each other, then cursed at the same time, "What a shameless scum." Hastily Wu Qi cried out, "Hey! 2 old masters, slow down your petty business that has been going on for thousands of years. Tell me my condition first. If you don't give me enough benefits, I'll take this relic of Empress De Qin and give it away to someone else. It's fine if you don't want to give it to Princess Zhanglu, I'll give it to some girls in a brothel." Su Qin laughed wildly, while Zhang Yi roared furiously, "How dare you? Little fellow, just you wait, De Qin will never let you go. I'm so mad at you. Well, here's the good thing, it's up to you." With a flip of his hand, a flying sword enshrouded in an immense cold air shot out from Zhang Yi's palm. 130 years ago, His Majesty led us to the great central ridge in the depths of Meng Mountains and discovered an immortal cave left behind by an immortal. From there, we found this lower-grade spirit item, the Snow Dragon Sword. Zhang Yi sneered and said, "A lower-grade spirit item? Have you ever heard of such a treasure?" "A lower-grade spirit item?" Wu Qi burst into a loud laughter. "Damn it, do you really think I'm an idiot? During the Rare Treasures Conference, that treasure was the innate Earth Element Energy Essence, and I was planning to use it to craft a magical treasure. Do you really think I took it as the acquired Earth Element Energy Essence? A lower-grade spirit item. Master Wu Qi even has an innate treasure, and you want to use a lower-grade spirit item to exchange for the relic of Ying Zhang's wife? Dream on." Turning around, Wu Qi kicked the door open and strode out. Zhang Yi was startled, then he shouted hastily. Chapter 205. "Hold on. Lad, you do know how to recognize treasures. No wonder you swallowed the innate Earth Element Energy Essence, leaving no chance for anyone else." Zhang Yi stared at Wu Qi with a little anger. Grinning coldly, he said, Good. Fortunately, His Majesty has prepared for this. Before leaving, His Majesty told me to kill you if I can, and it will be best if I can snatch back the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. If I can't kill you, I'll use this precious treasure to exchange for the Empress legacy." While grinning coldly, Zhang Yi flipped his hand, and an 8-colored beam shot out from his palm, falling abruptly into the middle of the room. A hazy and auspicious light enveloped the entire room, as a chariot pulled by 8 horses slowly emerged amidst the auspicious light. The chariot had a simple and elegant design, and its body was made of some unknown material that was neither gold, jade, iron, nor stone. However, it had a glossy appearance, and was faintly shining with all sorts of glows from the sun, the moon, and the stars. The 8 horses were only about 3 feet tall, and they looked like living creatures. They were galloping at top speed, looking extraordinary. The body of the chariot was simple and elegant, measuring about 6 feet in both width and length. A large canopy was placed on top of the chariot, with jade necklaces dangling down from it. Countless layers of auspicious lights were intertwined on the surface of the chariot, which contained countless restrictive spells. Looking at the chariot with naked eyes, one could see countless restrictive spells flashing and vanishing like a meteor shower. It made Wu Qi feel a sharp pain in his eyes, as he could not see how many restrictive spells there were in the chariot. A vast, ancient, and dignified aura came rushing at his face, as if there was a mighty god standing before everyone, waiting for their worship. Vaguely, loud cheers could be heard coming from the chariot, as if millions of people were worshipping and cheering for the chariot. An enormous power of faith was coiling around the chariot. It was shockingly strong, and when Wu Qi's divine will touched it, he immediately had a terrible feeling that his soul was about to be crushed. Zhang Yi, what the hell are you doing? What is this thing? He was taken aback, and nearly cried out. This chariot was too shocking. Judging from its ancient appearance, its majestic aura, the auspicious light from the restrictions, the enormous willpower, and the indistinct cheers of the people, this should be an emperor's artifact of virtue. It was definitely an emperor's artifact of virtue, and it was definitely an ancient emperor who had incredible strength and had achieved immeasurable results of virtue. Zhang Yi sneered. He looked at Wu Qi and said, "This is the Mu King's chariot of 8 horses. Of course, you have no idea who Son of Heaven Mu is, and you have no idea what kind of extraordinary treasure the chariot of 8 horses is. In short, this was His Majesty's treasure of virtue. It possessed boundless might, and its speed was incomparably fast. There were very few people and things in this world that could catch up to this carriage. Are you going to exchange this treasure for the Empress relic?" Staring coldly at Wu Qi, Zhang Yi said coldly, "Shuemeng Jian, frankly speaking, if I want to deceive you, I will. If I can't, I will use this chariot of 8 horses to exchange for it. Since you are a knowledgeable man, you should know that this is an ancient emperor's item of virtue. Ha! Compared to it, this lower-grade spirit item is nothing. Ha!" Wu Qi looked greedily at the chariot of 8 horses. How could he not know about King Mu of Zhou, son of Heaven Mu? How could he not know about his 8 horses? He was the son of Heaven Mu, who once patrolled the lands to the west and met with the Queen Mother of the West, an ancient god. His chariot was pulled by 8 heavenly horses. The 8 horses were divided into 4 categories. 1 was a treacherous ground, never treading on the ground. 2 were flying feather, surpassing birds. 3 were running night, traveling tens of thousands of miles in the night. 4 were surpassing shadow, traveling under the sun. 5 were surpassing radiance, having a shiny coat. 6 were surpassing light, having 1 form and 10 forms. 7 were soaring mist, riding on clouds. And 8 were supporting wings, having a pair of fleshy wings. They were the famous divine mounts in history, and their names had been completely turned into myths and legends. The son of Heaven Mu, King Mu of Zhou, was also the emperor with the strongest and most mysterious divinity in history. The records and legends about him were just a myth, and not a historical biography. If this chariot of 8 horses was truly created by the son of Heaven Mu, then his myths and legends should be 99% true. Only an idiot would not trade for it. Look at its size, look at its shape, look at its luster. Only an idiot would not trade for such a great treasure. Wu Qi laughed wildly, casually pulling out the box made of lacquer and throwing it over to him. After that, he impatiently kept the chariot into the Black Dragon's spirit ring. Needless to say, an item of virtue belonging to an ancient emperor would either possess the aura of the human emperor or possess an unparalleled overall strength. Otherwise, no one would be able to control it. Wu Qi was just a commoner. He did possess the aura of a rascal, a thief, or a fugitive. However, as for the aura of the human emperor, it might not match with him even after 100 lifetimes. With his current cultivation base, he was not even a heaven immortal, let alone controlling an extraordinary treasure like this. Nevertheless, Wu Qi was not worried at all. If he could not even control an item of virtue, the scroll of stealing would not be the scroll of stealing. If it were some other powerful innate magical treasures or various immortal items, which could only be controlled by someone with a formidable overall strength, Wu Qi would not be able to do anything about it. However, although it looked like an item of virtue was the most difficult to control, it was actually the easiest to master. After keeping the chariot of 8 horses into the Black Dragon spirit ring, Wu Qi was so happy that his eyes narrowed into 2 lines. Zhang Yi took over the box, gave Wu Qi a deep look, nodded his head and said, "All right, I'll leave the chariot of 8 horses to you. Take good care of it, along with the Black Dragon spirit ring. When the mighty army of Daqin crushes Ji City, you'll have to hand them over to me. His Majesty has said that these treasures will only be temporarily kept in your hands. You're on your own now." Su Qin sneered and said, "Junior brother, you're looking down on your senior brother by saying that. Why don't you say that the mighty army of Great Yen crushes Xianyang City?" Zhang Yi smiled, then turned to Su Qin and said, "Senior brother, why don't we make a bet?" Su Qin's interest was aroused. As he rubbed his palms together and was about to make a bet with Zhang Yi, Wu Qi suddenly said coldly, "When the mighty army of Daqin crushes Ji City, I'll definitely find a most remote and desolate place, deep in the mountains, and throw this black dragon spirit ring into it, making it stay in the world forever. After that, I'll immediately slit my own throat and reincarnate. Let's see if you can find the chariot of 8 horses or not." Zhang Yi was stunned, and so was Li Exin. Su Qin was struck dumb for a brief moment. Suddenly, he held his stomach and burst out into a wild laughter. "Junior brother, Zhang Yi, how could you forget that the most difficult people to deal with under the heaven are not the emperor, not the ministers, not the heroes, but the most difficult people to deal with are these little rascals? I suddenly have a premonition that Ing Zheng will suffer a great loss in the hands of this little rascal. Do you believe me?" Zhang Yi twitched his lips and stormed out of the room while cursing, disappearing in just a blink of an eye. Li Exin was struck dumb for a moment. Then he shook his head and gave the dog meat in the big clay pot a look with reluctance. After that, he hastily chased after Zhang Yi, transforming into a sword beam and flying away. Wu Qi and Su Qin looked at each other and smiled. Putting aside what happened just now, both of them squatted next to the fire pit, scooped up a piece of dog meat that was almost cooked, and began gnawing on it happily. The cold wind was whistling outside the room, but inside the room, it was steaming hot, and the aroma of meat was filling the air. There was also a delicious wine to accompany the meal. This was the joy of life. Neither of them cared about their seniority, and acted like a pair of scoundrel friends who had been together for many years. They drank and played with each other, and eventually finished the whole black dog meat to their heart's content. Su Qin's table manners were extremely unsightly. He even drank up all the soup in the pot, and nearly stuck out his tongue to lick the bottom of the pot. Li Exin, this little fellow, although he is not good at fighting, he is good at shooting arrows from the back. I never expected that dog meat can be cooked so well. Having eaten and drunk to his heart's content, Su Qin lied down on the leather bed without caring about his image, holding his belly and snorting. Wu Qi, on the other hand, was lying down on the leather bed with his legs crossed. He was humming a folk song, and complacently pondered over the story between Ing Zheng and his empress. However, this leisurely mood was soon broken, as the sonorous ringing of golden bells and jade bells was heard coming from far away in Ji City. The banquet of Great Yen Imperial Palace had begun. Su Qin and Wu Qi had no choice but to hug their round bellies. Helplessly, they set up their sword beams in the backyard and sped into the city. Both of them were busy changing their clothes in midair, and when they arrived at the entrance of the Imperial Palace, they had already changed into the splendid imperial dress. Many nobles and ministers of Great Yen Dynasty were lining up neatly and entering the imperial city. Su Qin and Wu Qi squeezed and squeezed through the crowd, and finally found their acquaintances. Shockingly, Su Qin was the best friend of a group of pedantic scholars from Great Yen Dynasty's editorial institute. After he blended into the group of pedantic old men, he quickly became one of them. On the other side, Wu Qi found Lu Qingfeng. Both of them exchanged a glance, telling each other that everything was fine. After that, they followed the crowd and walked into the imperial palace. When Wu Qi attended the banquet for the first time, he entered the highest hall with the identity of Lu Qingfeng's attendant. But today, as a noble of Great Yen Dynasty who also had the title of duke, Wu Qi was given a long narrow table right next to Lu Qingfeng. As Yen Dan and his company had not arrived yet, Wu Qi kept looking at the 3-tiered dais at the far end of the hall. To his surprise, he saw 5 luxurious long narrow tables inlaid with gold and jade on top of the dais. Behind the tables were 2 large chairs made of white jade, covered with a thick layer of demon beast fur. Right next to Yen Dan's seat, there were a few other simple and unadorned long narrow tables placed in order. During the imperial banquet of Great Yen Dynasty, all the guests, no matter it was the emperor or the others, would kneel behind the long narrow tables. This was the etiquette of Great Yen Dynasty. However, the chairs behind these 5 long narrow tables were very different from the etiquette of Great Yen Dynasty, and no one knew who they were prepared for. On the second tier of the dais, where there were only 5 people, including Jing Ku, were seated, but now, over 30 luxurious tables were added. A group of palace maids and eunuchs were bustling around these newly added tables. There were even a few strong and burly eunuchs, panting as they carried 2 slices of raw pig and lamb, carefully placing them on these tables. They were the raw pig and lamb, with fresh blood still dripping down from them. Wu Qi stared blankly at those large pieces of meat, and could not help but cry out in shock. Could it be that there are some people who eat raw meat and drink blood here today? How come even raw meat is served here? The rest of the people in the hall had also noticed that the situation on the dais was different today. Their eyes were filled with shock as they stared at these pieces of meat. A strange aura had enveloped the entire hall. Some of the influential members and ministers were glancing around anxiously, especially those ministers who made the bet with Jing Ku and Gao Jianli in the drill ground this morning. Their faces were filled with an aura of death, and their bodies were shivering. There were also some ministers who had a pitiful expression on their faces, looking at Prince of Ren, Yen Xianxin, and the other 8 princes who sat at the front of all the ministers. However, Yen Xianxin himself had an unsightly expression on his face, so how could he pay any attention to these henchmen? The battle in the drill ground was just a bet, but it had thoroughly exposed the division of power in the imperial court of Great Yen Dynasty. Many people had a premonition that a storm was coming. While Wu Qi was looking at these ministers, he suddenly saw Yu Wendi and Yu Chanxian sitting behind 2 tables that were placed next to each other, talking in a low voice with a strange smile on their faces. The smiles on their faces made Wu Qi feel very strange. Chapter 206. The second one was a skinny old man, He Qianqiu, the master of the immortal cliff of Meng Mountains. His territory was only 5 million miles wide, but most of the demons and devils in the immortal cliff were flying creatures, so half of the airspace of Meng Mountains was under the control of He Qianqiu's disciples and disciples. He Qianqiu had just broken through the realm of mid-stage nascent divinity, so his cultivation base was much weaker than Xiong Wanling. However, as a crane, he could fly in the air. Therefore, if they were to engage in a real battle, the result would be a draw. Wu Qi picked up the wine cup and took a sip without making a sound. The way the father and daughter addressed Yen Dan and his men was very interesting. They were addressing Yen Dan and his men by their name. Clearly, in their hearts, they did not take the emperor, crown prince, princess, and the others seriously. They were very confident, but where did they get this confidence from? Yu clan was just the chief editor of Great Yen Dynasty. Although it was a noble clan, it did not have any real power. The third one was a short and stout old man, Huo Wu. He had the bloodline of the bald owl, an ancient ferocious bird, and had a cultivation base close to peak stage nascent divinity realm. He was only slightly weaker than Weining Dragon King of Longyuan River. Although he was short and stout, he had an amazing cultivation base. However, it was very difficult for the bald owl to mix with other rare birds. Therefore, Huo Wu was a loner without any offspring. However, he had taken in many ferocious birds, built the 1,000-bone cave, and occupied the other half of the airspace of Meng Mountains. In addition to these 4 strange-looking men, the last woman was not tall, not short, not fat, not thin, not fat, not thin. She was too fat, too thin, too thin. She walked like a weak willow in the wind, a fragrance wafting from her body. She smiled before she spoke, and was as beautiful as a young girl in a romantic dream. But it was not right to call her a teenage girl. She had the body and appearance of a stunning beauty, but the charm she exuded was something even 1,000 experienced brothels could not compare to. Yen Dan gave the lady a helpless look, smiled bitterly and said, "Fox King, please spare Yen Dan's ministers. How could they withstand your mercy?" Suddenly, golden bells and jade chimes rang in unison, and the musicians on both sides of the main hall played drums. Accompanied by the vigorous and powerful court drum music, Yen Dan and his entourage, surrounded by many eunuchs and palace maids, strode out from the back of the hall. In the main hall, many nobles and officials knelt down to pay their respects to Chi-Chi, shouting, "Long live His Majesty." Yen Dan, whose face was glowing with health, seemed to be in high spirits. He raised his hands and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, please rise, rise. There's no need to be overly courteous." While chuckling, the woman abruptly opened her mouth and said, "People, is Su-mei beautiful?" As soon as Yen Dan's words left his mouth, everyone's expression changed. The last man was 8 feet tall. He was even thinner than the Qin Qing Shui that Wu Qi had seen before. He was practically a human-shaped stick. His skin was purple gold in color, and under his skin, there were faintly visible scales. His eyes were like those of a cat, narrowed into a thin line under the strong lamplight in the main hall, revealing the cold-blooded and merciless characteristic of cold-blooded animals. He never looked at anyone, but kept glancing at the wine utensils, silver, and all kinds of metal utensils in the main hall. He seemed to be drooling with greed. The fourth man was a skinny middle-aged man, a golden armor devourer, an ancient beast who cultivated into a human form. The golden armor devourer loved to eat all kinds of metals, and devoured the energies contained in them. His body was extremely tough. Although he had just broken through to the nascent divinity realm 1,300 years ago, with his incredibly strong fleshly body, he was able to fight against Wanying Dragon King, a peak-stage nascent divinity expert. He had the dominion of 50 million miles of forests and woods in Meng Mountains, and had built a great foundation in the bottomless dark abyss of Meng Mountains, with countless demons and devils serving under his command. After waiting for all the influential officials and ministers of Great Yen to pay their respects to Yen Dan once again, only then did Yen Dan smilingly introduce these 5 strange-looking men and women to the crowd. Right after the lady walked out from behind Ma Yi, her pink eyes, which were as deep as 2 pools of water, gave everyone a quick glance. Immediately, 99% of the few thousand influential officials and ministers of Great Yen Dynasty in the main hall lost their composure and fell to the ground with a thud. These people stared at the lady with an unbearable expression, while gulping and swallowing saliva. Some even had their lower bodies bulging, staring at her with eyes that seemed to be shooting flames. It looked like they could not wait to pounce on her, put their arms around her, and have sex with her on the spot. Wu Qi smiled and nodded at her, then turned to look at the rest of the people standing behind Yen Dan. After introducing these 5 formidable demons who occupied a region in Meng Mountains, Yen Dan smiled and said, 3 days ago, Yen Dan had burned the imperial decree and offered it to the heaven, worshipping 5 demon kings as the imperial advisors of Great Yen Dynasty. From now on, 5 demon kings are connected with the fate of Great Yen Dynasty. We will live or die together. The Crown Prince of Great Yen Dynasty, Yen Qijuan, the Prime Minister of Inner Palace, Ma Yi, and 12 inner ministers clad in the bright red robe of eunuchs. Apart from these people, there were also 5 extraordinary people, 4 men and 1 woman, who were dressed very differently from the people of Great Yen Dynasty. Their expressions were relaxed, and their aura was restrained within their bodies, not leaking out at all. Yet, they gave one a feeling that they were like nuclear warheads that could explode with a frightening lethality at any time. At this moment, both father and daughter were looking at the throne on the dais at the same time. Yu Qianqian murmured with a surprised tone, "This is strange. Apart from Yen Qijuan and Yen Zixuan, who else can sit side by side with Yen Dan? I think only Mod and Su Qin are qualified to do so in Great Yen Dynasty, right?" Fortunately, Wu Qi had another ability, lip reading. He bowed his head, peeking at Yu Qianqian and Yu Wendi from the corner of his eyes, who were whispering to each other in a far distance, carefully analyzing the movements of their lips. Combined with the subtle changes in their expressions and the glances that were darting around, Wu Qi was able to understand what they were saying with 100% certainty. On top of that, there was a layer of faint ripple of restrictive barrier around Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian. Wu Qi reckoned that they were wearing some treasures that could isolate divine will from probing. Under such circumstances, it would be very strenuous to eavesdrop on the conversation between father and daughter using divine will. Standing behind the old man was an old man with a strange appearance. The old man had a very long neck, and his body was very fat. His body was round like a meatball, but his limbs were thin and long, looking like a meatball with 4 thin matchsticks stuck in it. It gave him a very strange look. The meatball-like body of the old man kept expanding and shrinking, while the surrounding air was constantly being sucked into his body. Then, accompanied by the whistling of the wind, the air was sprayed out from his body. The first man was Xiong Wanling, the lord of Black Wind Gorge in Meng Mountains. He was the demon king who ruled over the forest 30 million miles around Black Wind Gorge in Meng Mountains. He was an almighty cultivator of nascent soul and divine transformation realm, with a cultivation base of mid-stage nascent divinity nearly breaking through to late stage. The 2 brothers, Xiong Jin and Xiong Yin, were the grandsons of Xiong Wanling, while Xiong Qing and his brothers were the sons of his grandsons. There was a gap of several generations between them. There were at least over 3,000 demon bears from Black Wind Gorge, secretly serving in various government offices of Great Yen Dynasty. Their numbers were especially high among the swallows and palace guards. Among all the demon beasts in Meng Mountains, Xiong Wanling was the demon king who had the closest cooperation with Great Yen Dynasty. Following the crowd, Wu Qi rose to his feet and sat down on the mat. Curiously, he looked at the group of people who stood behind Yen Dan on the dais. The grand hall was densely covered with all kinds of restrictive spells, which effectively blocked the probing of divine will. Wu Qi's divine will was different from ordinary cultivators. It was nourished by the innate energies of 5 elements, and was born with the power of thunder tribulation. As a result, it was born with all kinds of magical abilities. Thus, these restrictive spells could not block his probing. However, a restrictive spell was a restrictive spell, and it was still too strenuous for him to use his divine will to eavesdrop on the conversation of others amidst so many restrictive spells. Wu Qi's heart twitched, and a flame of evil flame suddenly rose from his lower abdomen. Before the flame of evil could begin to wreak havoc, the 7 holy deities and devils had already rushed out from his spiritual ocean, swallowing the flame of evil. Suddenly, the figures of the 7 deities and devils became much clearer, singing and dancing while cheering and roaring in Wu Qi's body. Then, Wu Qi pressed his palm onto Lu Qingfeng's back, sucking away the flame of evil desire that suddenly burst out from his body, and fed it to the 7 holy deities and devils. After all, Wu Qi only had a thread of his nascent divinity, and he did not transform his entire soul into a nascent divinity that could leave his body and roam freely. However, none of the other influential members in the Grand Hall had the ability to protect their mind like Wu Qi did. Apart from Yen Xianchen, who had a profound cultivation base and was able to keep a steady mind, all the others had their faces blushed. Chi snorted. There were even a few hundred ministers and nobles who bent their waists and leaped to their feet, hastily walking out of the Grand Hall to change their clothes. The sweet cry of the girl had caused these ministers and nobles to lose their virginity at the same time, making them embarrass themselves on the spot. Needless to say, the 5th girl was Su Mei. She was the direct descendant of the ancient 9-tailed heavenly fox, with a cultivation base of mid-stage nascent divinity realm, and she had already grown 6 tails. She had countless demon girls, including fox demons, flower demons, tree demons, and many other demon girls. Over 70% of the brothels in Great Yen Dynasty were occupied by these demon girls from the Enchanting Palace. Not only were the purses of those men who visited the brothels in high spirits plundered by these demon girls, even their yang energies had contributed greatly to the improvement of the cultivation base of these demon girls from the Enchanting Palace. Standing next to this burly man was an old man with white hair and a body that looked like an ancient pine tree. The old man had a pair of dark green eyes that looked like a pair of supreme-grade emeralds. He had a huge frame, but was very skinny. A white robe draped over his body, making him look even more skinny, as if he could be blown away by the wind. The old man's steps were steady and light, as if his toes could never touch the ground. He followed closely behind Yen Dan and entered the Grand Hall. Raising his head, Wu Qi gave Yu Wendy and Yu Chanxian an eerie glance with his eyes as sharp as lightning bolts. Both father and daughter had a quick reaction, as they immediately sensed that Wu Qi was looking at them again. With a straight face, Yu Chanxian tilted her head up proudly and looked at the gold-plated patterns on the ceiling. Meanwhile, Yu Wendy smilingly raised up his wine cup and gave a toast to Wu Qi from a distance. Wu Qi also raised up his empty wine cup and gave a toast to Yu Wendy. After that, he picked up his empty wine cup and made a gesture of drinking the wine. Among the 4 men, one of them was a middle-aged burly man. He stood nearly 15 feet tall, taller than the rest of the men around him. His skin was dark and his face was covered with thick black hair. When he walked, the grand hall was trembling slightly. His eyes shone with a bizarre golden hue, and a wild heat could be sensed amidst the coldness in his eyes. An endless power was hidden in his enormous body. Just by looking at his body, Wu Qi instinctively felt that he could easily lift up a great mountain. Amidst the sound of footsteps, Jing Ku, Gao Jianli, Qin Weiyang, and Tian Guang led a group of 20 to 30 men and women into the grand hall, each with different looks and appearances, and took their seats on the second level of the dais. Meanwhile, Yen Dan and his company had also taken their seats on the highest level of the dais. Su Meier smiled again. Then, the expression on her seductive face turned solemn, and a strong cold aura burst out from her body. In an instant, she had transformed from a seductive girl who could topple all living beings into a pure, holy, and inviolable saint lady. Her cold and dignified gaze swept across the crowd. The bodies of all the influential nobles, who were still harboring lustful thoughts just a moment ago, trembled, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. It was so cold that their bodies kept shivering, and the flame of desire in their bodies had long vanished without a trace. Yu Wendy narrowed his eyes and looked thoughtfully at the dais. He shook his head lightly and said in a low voice, "Let's wait and see first. Let's wait and see. This is really interesting, really interesting. The reaction of Yen Dan and Lao AI has exceeded my expectation. What will they do next? Are they really going to exert all their strength and fight a life-and-death battle with that man from Daqin dynasty?" Princess Zhonglu, with her back shrouded in 5-colored divine rays, was winking at Wu Qi and snickering at him. She kept showing her teeth and brandishing her claws at Wu Qi, and she was just short of jumping down from the dais and playing with Wu Qi. She was the happiest person when Wu Qi won in the drill ground today. Wu Qi had forcibly formed his Jin Dan with the mystic technique of stealing energy, and his cultivation base had caught up with Princess Zhongli's. It made Princess Zhonglu feel an indescribable joy. Chapter 207. On the dais, the 5 demon kings remained motionless. However, on the second dais, the group of 20 to 30 great demons who stood side by side with Jing Ku and the others had unleashed an enormous demonic aura, which blanketed the entire grand hall. The demonic aura that felt like a corporeal substance pervaded the grand hall, causing the members of Great Yen Imperial Clan, nobles, and ministers to feel their bodies tighten. Their bodies were drenched in cold sweat, and they dropped to their knees in terror. Sitting on the dais, Yen Dan was smiling as he looked at the members of Great Yen Imperial Clan and ministers, who kept quiet out of fear. A fierce gleam that was as sharp as a blade flashed in his eyes. "I don't care what you, the ministers of Great Yen Dynasty, have in mind what you are plotting behind the scenes, whether you are coveting the throne of Yen Dan, whether you are plotting something against the world of Great Yen Dynasty." When the terrifying strength that could easily destroy the lives of everyone was revealed, all the proud sons of the heavens, all the sect masters of the noble clans, all the high and mighty officials, all of them had to obediently kneel down and bow their heads in submission. Great Yen Dynasty can only have one supreme emperor, and that is Yen Dan. You stand high and mighty in front of the people, you can call the wind and summon the rain in Great Yen Dynasty, and with just a word from you, you can decide the life and death of millions of people. But you must remember that it is Yen Dan who gave you the status, the power, and the position. He is the emperor, and you are his ministers. This is your duty. All of a sudden, Yen Dan burst into a loud laughter. Behind his back, a grayish-white spirit light towered into the sky. Amidst the grayish-white spirit light that contained the transformations of life and death, the ever-changing aura of life and death, An ancient-looking and heavy wheel, emanating an immense cold breeze, slowly rose up. The wheel measured 60 feet in diameter and 10 feet in thickness. Its entire body was engraved with countless ancient, profound, and unrecognizable runes. 6 lines of dim light divided the wheel into 6 equal parts. Vaguely, patterns of humans, ghosts, animals, and many other strange creatures could be seen looming on its surface. Wu Qi gave it a quick glance, and in an instant he associated it with one of the famous treasures in Scroll of Stealing. The Disk of Heavenly Tao Transmigration was an acquired spirit treasure crafted by a group of almighty experts, and it possessed an unimaginably magical power. To the demons, the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc was extremely useful. The bodies of fiendish demons were born with evil and ferocious qi that could not be tolerated by the heavens and earth. This was especially true when one was a fiendish demon. It was unknown how much evil they had committed in their previous lives before they were reincarnated as a fiendish demon. With the evil karma from their previous lives, the power of their thunder tribulation was comparable to that of those unlucky Longbow Kingdom people. The power of the thunder tribulation was extremely strong, and only 1 in 10,000 demons could survive it. However, once Yen Dan activated the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc, the demons would have a chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation once again. They would be able to erase the karma of their past lives, allowing their cultivation path to be much smoother. All the demons and devils that cultivated from beasts were cruel and brutal by nature. Their minds were unstable, and when they encountered the inner devil or the heavenly devil tribulation, their primordial spirits would be easily devoured by the devils and they would suffer a great calamity. The Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc could allow demons to enter the Tao of Reincarnation and experience the 3,000 red dust. It could stabilize the demons' Tao hearts and prevent them from being affected by external factors. With the protection of the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc, the demons and devils would have a great Tao that could lead them straight to immortality. No wonder the 5 demon kings had joined Great Yen Dynasty, and no wonder a few reclusive demons and devils had become the secret sinecures of Great Yen Dynasty. Today, Yen Dan had even burned the imperial edict to the heaven, officially worshipping the 5 demon kings and becoming the imperial advisor of Great Yen Dynasty. With this, the demon kings and the fate of Great Yen Dynasty were connected, and they could be strengthened by the energy of the human emperor of Great Yen Dynasty. Every word and action of theirs would be strengthened by the faith of the billions of people in Great Yen Dynasty. As long as they could protect the safety of the people of Great Yen Dynasty, they would be protected by the virtues. For these formidable demon kings, the thing they feared the most was the heaven immortal tribulation that would befall them on the day they formed their nascent divinity. It was extremely difficult for demons and devils to attain the righteous fruit. Among 1 million demons and devils, not even one could survive the heaven immortal tribulation. However, as long as they were protected by the virtues of Great Yen Dynasty and were strengthened by the faith of billions of people, the power of the heaven immortal tribulation would be reduced to nothing. As long as their cultivation base reached a certain level, they could easily attain the righteous fruit of heaven immortal. With the help of the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc and the protection from the fortune of Great Yen Dynasty, the 5 demon kings could only obediently become the imperial advisors of Great Yen Dynasty, the loyal fighters of Great Yen Dynasty. With the help of these 5 demon kings and the millions upon millions of demon descendants under their command, the internal strife of Great Yen Dynasty was nothing but a joke in Yen Dan's eyes. When Weining Dragon King attacked the Qin army, he had easily gathered millions of great demons from Longyuan River. How many demons and devils did these 5 demon kings, who shared the same fame as him, have under their command? Before such an army of demons and devils, no matter how ambitious a hero or hero in Great Yen Dynasty was, he or she would have to obediently kowtow before Yen Dan, throwing away the tiny bit of ambition in his or her heart into the latrine. What a great strategy! Looking at the smiling face of Yen Dan, Wu Qi could not help but praise him. It looked like Yen Dan had also prepared countless trump cards. Just this disc of Heavenly Tao Reincarnation, which was crafted by imitating the 6 paths of reincarnation, had a power not weaker than the Cauldron of You. It would not be easy for Yingjing to compete with Great Yan Dynasty. The Disk of Heavenly Tao Reincarnation was one of the top acquired spirit treasures found in the Scroll of Stealing. Yen Dan's enormous aura mixed with the demon aura of those great demons, suppressing all the courtiers in the Grand Hall, making them not dare to move. The faces of Yen Xianchen and the others turned ashen. Cold sweat kept dripping down from their chins, drenching the carpet before them. Their minds were blank as they stared at Yen Dan, who had the huge disk hovering above his head. They had no idea where this huge disk of Heavenly Tao Reincarnation came from. As the strongest figure among the 8 governors of Great Yan Dynasty, even Yen Xianchen had no idea that Yen Dan actually owned an acquired spirit treasure like this. Inside the huge disk of Heavenly Tao Reincarnation, 2 bright lights of gray and white were blinking vaguely. When the bright lights moved, the bodies of all the people in the Grand Hall twitched, as if their souls were about to be crushed and shattered by the bright lights. At the same time, it was as if there were countless frightening existences rushing out from the 6 paths and devouring their souls. Under such a pressure, none of the civil and military officials in the imperial court dared to have any other thoughts. Yen Dan smiled, a very happy smile. He said softly, "Over the years, Yen Dan has been in a secluded cultivation, seeking for a breakthrough. Therefore, he has handed over the power of the imperial court to the 8 governors. Recently, Yen Dan has broken through the bottleneck, and his cultivation base has improved at a tremendous pace. Not only has his nascent soul attained mastery, but he will soon step into the nascent divinity realm with the help of the spirit treasure, truly achieving the Tao of immortality and living a free and unfettered life. Therefore, the system of supervising the imperial court by the 8 governors is no longer needed." Taking a deep breath, Yen Dan said, "Ma-yi, draft up a decree. From today onwards, I will personally supervise the imperial court. All government orders without my personal signature and seal are considered as arbitrary orders. All the people of Great Yan are not allowed to obey them. The power of Great Yan's 3 prime ministers and 9 ministers, as well as many government offices, will be taken back. All the ministers will report directly to Yen Dan. From today onwards, the 8 governors will be completely dismissed." The few thousand ministers in the Grand Hall answered in unison, "We will obey your Majesty's decree." Yen Dan nodded his head satisfyingly. He stuck out his chest and said in a cold voice, "In Great Yan, there is a mortal enemy named Daqin. All the ministers do not need to know the origin of Daqin. They only need to know that Daqin is the mortal enemy of Great Yan. In this world, if Great Yan exists, there will be no Daqin. If Daqin exists, there will be no Great Yan. The army of Daqin has appeared in Meng Mountains, less than 400,000 miles away from the border of Great Yan. Therefore, I've decided to prepare the army and fight a life-and-death battle with Daqin." Abruptly, Yen Dan rose to his feet and said in a cold voice, "The posts of imperial judges of front, back, left, and north will be abolished, and they will be replaced by the 4-field headquarter of north, south, east, and west. They will be responsible for supervising the vassal kingdoms in the 4 directions, organizing their armies and fighting a life-and-death battle with Daqin. The former 4 imperial judges of front, back, left, and north will be replaced by the chief supervisors of the 4-field headquarter of Great Yan Dynasty. They will be promoted to the positions of east, west, north, and south generals. Their positions are comparable to the chief generals of Great Yan Dynasty, and they will be responsible for the preparation of provisions and armaments, the mobilization of soldiers, the maintenance of city defenses, and the strict inspection of military law and discipline." Yen Dan snorted coldly and said with a stern voice, "As long as Daqin is not wiped out, the 4-field headquarter will never be disbanded. All the vassal kingdoms under the heaven must obey the orders of the chief supervisors of the 4-field headquarter according to their territories. They will mobilize all the soldiers and manpower in their kingdom and follow Great Yan's army to launch a punitive expedition against Daqin." Wu Qi narrowed his eyes, gently poking Lu Qingfeng's back with his finger. Lu Qingfeng's body tensed up. He was so nervous that he almost burst out laughing. The four-field headquarter had the power to control all the military resources, manpower, and financial resources of the four vassal kingdoms. This power was much greater than the power of Zhuguixing. On top of that, the four chief supervisors of the four-field headquarter had the power to enforce the military law, which meant that they could use the military law to punish the monarchs and ministers of the vassal kingdoms. This power was too great to be described with words. After that, Yen Dan gave out another imperial decree. The chief supervisors of the four-field headquarter were the chief supervisors of the logistics department and the director of military law. Meanwhile, in the four-field headquarter, the ones who were responsible for fighting the Qin dynasty with real weapons were the other generals. The general of the West Field headquarter that Lu Chengfeng was in charge of was the chief general of Great Yen dynasty, Fan Yuqi. The main force of the war was the Black Swallow Army, which Fan Yuqi had been secretly training all these years. In short, Fan Yuqi was in charge of marching the army and fighting the war, and Lu Chengfeng was in charge of everything outside the war. The pay, provisions, the mobilization and recruitment of reserve soldiers, even the repair of the city wall, the reorganization of the outposts, the execution of the military law, were all under the responsibility of Lu Chengfeng. As the West Field headquarter happened to be facing the threat of Qin army, Yen Dan had given Lu Chengfeng a special authority. In the vassal kingdoms governed by the West Field headquarter, if any monarch refused to obey his orders, Lu Chengfeng could execute them first and report them later. As long as it was the resources needed by the army, Lu Chengfeng could freely assemble them on the spot. Even if he had to rob all the treasuries of those vassal kingdoms, as long as it was helpful to the war, Lu Chengfeng could make the decision arbitrarily. Lu Chengfeng respectfully walked out of the ranks and received the decree from Ma Yi, which was specially given to him, granting him the right to exercise absolute power. Even the 5 imperial advisors who had just been appointed by Great Yen dynasty would lead countless disciples, sons, and grandsons to follow the army under the command of the West Field headquarter. Of course, for those small fries, they could never expect the 5 imperial advisors to lend a hand. Only when they were facing a cultivator of Qin who possessed a similar overall strength would they lend a hand. Lu Chengfeng only had the authority to control them, but he didn't have the authority to order them to mobilize and enforce the law. After that, the official imperial decree was issued. The power of Great Yen dynasty, which was once scattered among the 8 princes and even Crown Prince Yen Qijuan, was now fully reclaimed into the hands of Yen Dan. Without Yen Dan's personal approval and personal seal, all the orders issued by the various government offices of Great Yen dynasty had lost their legal validity. Under the threat of 5 demon kings and several dozens of great demons, all the influential members and ministers in the Grand Hall bowed their heads and obeyed the orders, not daring to show any dissenting expression. Even Lao Ai, who had just been conferred the title of Prince of Changxin of Great Yen dynasty, was sitting on the dais. He kept twisting his body, as if there were thorns growing under his buttocks. Under the pressure of 5 demon kings, even this peerless evil man, Lao Ai, seemed to have become much more reserved. Looking at the strange expression on the faces of all his ministers, Yen Dan could not help but clap his hands and laugh out loud. "Come, today is the imperial banquet. My dear ministers, please enjoy yourselves to your heart's content." After a brief moment of pondering, Yen Dan said in a deep voice, "Old Mr. Mo, old Mr. Su, old Mr. Sun, and Mr. Han Fei, please come up here and have a drink with me." Mod, Su Qin, and Wu Qi were not surprised. However, Han Fei and old Mr. Sun had shaken Wu Qi and made his body turn stiff, as if countless thunderbolts were running through his body. Old Mr. Sun, could it be Sun Kuang? Chapter 208. Wu Qi shook his head and said in a low voice, "The reason why they are called Jin Dan human immortals is that the Jin Dan realm is mainly focused on accumulating energies and does not require any enlightenment of the heavenly Tao. As long as your fleshly body can withstand it, you will be able to form Jin Dan in the shortest time possible and improve the cultivation base of Jin Dan realm. Within 1 month, I want you to form Jin Dan and try your best to improve your Jin Dan realm." Yu Yi rose to his feet, looked at Wu Qi indifferently and said, "Yu Yi is a military general. A military general only cares about life and death, not right or wrong." The atmosphere in the Grand Hall had become very strange. Some ministers were stealthily glancing at Su Qin, Han Fei, and Sun Kuang from the corner of their eyes. Su Qin, the sour master who spent most of his time in Great Yen Dynasty's editorial institute, had suddenly appeared on the drill ground and made a bet with so many influential officials, which had frightened many people. Out of the blue, he even climbed up the dais and drank with Yen Dan, which had frightened many people even more. Yen Dan looked down at Yu Yi, who was kneeling on one knee. After a long while, he said coolly, "It was Yu Su who came to challenge him, and both of them signed a contract of life and death. Yu Su was killed by Duke of Tianyun in a fair duel." Yen Dan said coolly, "When Duke of Tianyun was young, he had consumed some spirit herbs, which made his fleshly body as strong as a flood dragon. Therefore, he was able to form his Jin Dan with the help of external pills. Furthermore, he accidentally obtained 2 acquired spirit pearls in the Rare Treasures Conference, which allowed him to kill Yu Su. No one caused any mischief in this duel. Do you understand, Yui?" As for Sun Kuang and Han Fei, not many people in Great Yen Imperial Court knew them. Seclusion was a very frightening term. With Sun Kuang's prowess in teaching disciples like Li Si and Han Fei, he had lived in seclusion in Great Yen Dynasty for over 2,000 years, and it was not until today that many ministers and nobles in Great Yen Dynasty knew about him. How many disciples had he taught during these 2,000 years? And how many of them could be compared with Li Si and Han Fei? How many people in the imperial court were Sun Kuang's disciples? Xiong Wanling and the other 4 demon kings, who were calm and composed when they first appeared on the stage, as if they did not care about anything, became restless after MOD and Senior Mr. Sun ascended the stage. The 5 demon kings kept casting sidelong glances at MOD and old Mr. Sun, and from time to time, their demonic auras would leak out. Under the threat of the demonic aura, MOD and old Mr. Sun had no choice but to release their auras to contend against them. The officials in the hall suddenly straightened their backs and looked at Wu Qi with schadenfreude. Several eunuchs hurriedly closed the doors of the main hall, blocking the cold wind and snow outside the main hall. However, the cold wind that had already blown into the main hall still circled around the main hall for a while before completely dissipating. The wind blew the candles, and the light and shadows in the main hall swayed. Their auras merged into one, and they actually faintly showed signs of resisting the 5 demon kings. This caused even Wu Qi to be shocked. Abruptly, Jingke placed both hands on the wine table and stared at Yu Yi with wide eyes like a tiger that was about to burst into a rage. Gao Jianli grabbed Jingke's shoulder and pushed him back into the seat. Meanwhile, Tian Guang pressed his hand on Jingke's thigh, using all his strength to prevent him from getting up. Only Qin Weang continued to drink and eat as if nothing had happened, as if nothing had anything to do with him. Keep them in the ring. There are energy stones and various materials in it, which you can use to study formations. There are also spirit talismans, which I robbed from the elders of Heavenly Spirit sect. Many of them are very powerful, and can even kill earth immortals of nascent soul realm. Be careful when using them. I also robbed all kinds of life-saving spirit pills, so it's always better to carry them with you. Most importantly, there are 15 kilograms of Flood Dragon blood essence in it, and a body-strengthening technique of Flood Dragon Clan. Absorb them all within 3 days according to the law. MOD had also created the MO sect, occupying a small area and teaching it to his disciples. From time to time, some influential members of Great Yen would ask him to craft various magical items for their descendants. But, who were Sun Kuang and Han Fei? What did they do? What made them qualified to sit on the dais and drink with Yen Dan? Furthermore, they looked so calm and composed. Clearly, they were very familiar with Yen Dan. Both of them were discussing how to improve Lu Chengfeng's cultivation base, and how to ensure that he would not self-detonate and kill himself during the process. All of a sudden, the door of the grand hall was pushed open, and a strong gust of wind brought in a great amount of snowflakes. The cold air brought along a faint smell of blood, as Yu Yi, clad in a heavy black armor and a black cloak, walked into the grand hall with a sword in his hand. Amidst the flickering shadows, a strange smile emerged on Yu Wendy's face, which was caught by Wu Qi. "If not for someone playing tricks on me, Yu Su should not have died," said Yu Yi in a deep voice. Wu Qi turned his head and saw a drop of cold sweat trickling down from Yu Wendy's forehead, dripping down from his nose and into his wine cup. Abruptly, Wu Qi straightened his body and said with a cold grin, "So, I am the one who deserved to die? Yu Yi, is that what you mean? Your grandson provoked me with a spear, pierced through Wu Qi's shoulder, and called Wu Qi a rascal, an assassin who stabbed his mother. That was the only impression Wu Qi had of Han Fei. No one could imagine that he was actually a monster with incredible intelligence and talent. He raised the wine cup and drank the wine, picked up the chopsticks and ate the meat. His every movement was like a wooden puppet, precise, yet with a trace of stiffness. Su Qin kept chattering beside him, and no one knew what he was talking about. But Han Fei only moved his lips occasionally and said a few words to Su Qin out of courtesy. On the dais, the 5 demon kings, Mod, and Sun Kuang, who were fighting with their auras, had retracted their auras. Once a nascent divinity cultivator retracted his aura, he would not be able to release any aura, making him look no different from an ordinary old man. Lu Qingfeng's eyes lit up as he finally understood what Wu Qi meant. A formation master could always challenge an enemy with a higher cultivation base. As long as he could form the Jin Dan, he would be able to construct a formation of 7 stars, 8 trigrams, and 9 palaces, which was more than enough to trap an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. Even if he could not kill them, he could at least save his own life. Once an all-out war broke out between Daqin and Great Yen, he would have a greater chance of saving his own life. Once again, Yu Wendy noticed Wu Qi. With a smile on his face, he raised up his wine cup and drank the drop of cold sweat together with the wine. What was even more frightening was that when Mod and Sun Kuang joined hands, they could faintly fight against the demonic energy unleashed by the 5 demon kings. What kind of cultivation was this? What kind of strength was this? Old Mr. Mod had a great reputation in Great Yen Dynasty, so it was not surprising for him to have such a cultivation base. But what about Sun Kuang? An unknown Sun Kuang actually possessed the cultivation base of nascent divinity realm. Were there any other unknown and fearsome figures like him? If there were still such fearsome figures hiding in Great Yen Dynasty, how many more of them were there? Lu Qingfeng took the ring and put it on his finger. He asked excitedly, "After refining the flood dragon's blood essence, will I be as invulnerable as a flood dragon?" Wu Qi shook his head and said in a low voice, "It's too late. West Headquarter will be the first to face Daqin's army. As the chief supervisor, you are responsible for the logistics and military law of West Headquarter. As the commander-in-chief of Daqin, I will assassinate a man like you first. Without sufficient overall strength, you will be killed in less than 3 days." With great effort, Wu Qi suppressed the shock in his heart, then began to steal a glance at Han Fei, who was sitting side by side with Su Qin. Is this the sharp claw of Great Yen hiding in the dark? Occasionally, when Han Fei revealed his horn, it was enough to make Wu Qi's muscles tense up, and almost instinctively he was ready to flee at any time. In fact, Sun Kuang was not a threat to Wu Qi, and there was no enmity between them. But the overall strength he had shown was too strong, and what he represented was too frightening. Wu Qi was like a little rabbit who heard the roar of a ferocious beast, trying to flee out of instinct. Lu Qingfeng covered his face with a wry smile and complained in a low voice, "There are many things to deal with in Imperial Judge Court. These days, there are many things to deal with. Fortunately, Chu Yuan and the others are here, and they can help me share some of the burden. After these days, I think I can have some free time to improve my cultivation base and study the arts of heaven patching formation." Even if Mod did not mention it, Wu Qi was quite familiar with him. But, according to Yen Dan's introduction, old Mr. Sun was indeed Sun Kuang, whom Wu Qi had guessed. He was a minister of Zhao State during the last years of the Warring States period, and the master of Han Fei and Li Si. He was a subject of Zhao, but no one knew why he had abandoned Zhao and lived in seclusion in Great Yen. "Yu Su will not die," said Yu Yi in a deep voice. As a man who knew Sun Quang's background, Wu Qi felt his scalp go numb, and cold sweat kept breaking out from all over his body. Wu Qi sneered maliciously and said, "Sweat and urine are almost the same in composition, the only difference is the place where they flow out. So, this fellow is a man who likes to drink urine." Staring coldly at you, Wendy, Wu Qi sighed and said, "If you have not done anything wrong, why should you be afraid of Sun Quang and Han Fei? Editor's yard? Editor's yard? This is the territory of Yu clan. So, this old fellow has been hiding in Editor's yard all this while? Interesting, interesting." Wu Qi just sneered, with a five-colored gleam flickering faintly in his eyes. Yu Yi gave Wu Qi a cold glance, then turned to Yen Dan, cupped his fist and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive me for returning to the capital without permission. I'll return to the front line now and put down the rebellion. As for Yu Su, I'll bring him to the front line to temper him. Duke of Tianyun, remember, you have one more enemy in Great Yen." Wu Qi cursed angrily. Relying on his cultivation base of peak stage Jin Dan, Yu Su challenged me, a Xiantian Daoist, with his cultivation base of peak stage Jin Dan. I, Wu Qi, am lucky to have forcefully condensed Jin Dan with a mystic technique of stealing energy and killed him in front of so many people. Yu Yi, could it be that only your family members can kill me, but I can't kill with my blade? Clenching his fists tightly, Wu Qi laughed and said, "If you don't want to explode into pieces, you'll have to work hard to refine these flood dragon blood essences. Only with a strong enough fleshly body can you withstand the impact of energies and condensed Jin Dan. With the overall strength of Jin Dan, the power of the formations you can deploy will be at least dozens of times stronger. And a master of formation can always challenge enemies who are stronger than you." After searching for a while, Wu Qi gave Lu Qingfeng 2 storage rings with a large capacity. Yu cupped his fist and bowed to Yen Dan, then spun and strode out of the grand hall. Only a human immortal of Jin Dan realm could achieve such a rapid advancement. With a strong fleshly body that could withstand the impact of energies, one could quickly condense Jin Dan and improve their cultivation base. When one stepped into the realm of nascent soul, one would have to begin to comprehend the heaven and earth, fusing the Tao of heaven and earth into one's nascent soul. Only then would one be able to keep improving his cultivation base. At that point of time, one could still use this evil technique that could improve one's cultivation base rapidly, but if one's foundation was unstable, the consequences would be fatal. After taking 100 steps into the grand hall, Yu Yi knelt down on one knee. He bowed deeply and said with a deep voice, "Your Majesty, my youngest son, Yu Su, has been killed." He picked up the wine cup and gave a toast to you, Wendy. After that, he turned his head and said to Lu Qingfeng with a low voice, "Now that I don't have the overall strength, it will be hard for me to stay in Great Yen Dynasty. West Guarding General, the chief supervisor of Great Yen Dynasty's West Field headquarters, are you still a cultivator of respiration tier of Xiantian realm?" During the imperial banquet, apart from Yen Dan, who was always calm and confident, perhaps only Princess Zhang Lu, who never took anything to heart, was enjoying the food. All the other people, including Wu Qi, felt like chewing wax. They ate listlessly, and their eyes kept darting back and forth in the surroundings. Chapter 209. Staring at Yu Yi's back as he walked out of the grand hall, Yen Dan shook his head helplessly. Breathing out a heavy sigh, Yen Dan turned to Wu Qi and said, "Yu Yi, the Minister of Great Yen." Wu Qi, the Minister of Great Yen. As the monarch of Great Yen, I can't be partial to anyone. Duke of Tianyun, Wu Qi, you will follow Qingfen to the West Field headquarters, and you will be responsible for dispatching the military forces of all vassal kingdoms in the West, preparing for the war. I will appoint you as the Deputy Chief Supervisor of West Field headquarters, and the General of the West Field headquarters. You take care of yourself." Wu Qi did not say anything, but bowed at Yen Dan. "This is called not being partial? You are obviously taking Yu Yi's side, and it is his family members who are being rude, yet you want Wu Qi to avoid them? This is what you call being partial." Nevertheless, Wu Qi also understood that Yen Dan had been taking good care of him. By sending him out of Ji City, avoiding Yu Yi, who was in the middle of a war, and even giving him a military post, he was protecting him. Otherwise, if Wu Qi was allowed to stay in Ji City, Yue would have countless ways to plot against him, and it would be impossible to guard against any open or covert attacks. After the disturbance caused by Yue, the 5 demon kings, Mod and Sun Kuang, who were secretly fighting against each other, had retracted their aura, raised their cups, drank wine, and enjoyed the meat like everyone else. Without the frightening pressure unleashed by them, the atmosphere in the grand hall gradually returned to normal. The drumming began to play again, while a large group of dancers drifted out from the back of the hall, singing and dancing in the middle of the hall. Indeed, it was a prosperous and luxurious place with endless enjoyment. Then, Wu Qi began to murmur to Lu Chengfeng in a low voice. Word by word, he was teaching Lu Chengfeng the essentials of cultivating the body-strengthening technique of Flood Dragon. After all, it was not an easy task for Lu Chengfeng to absorb 15 kilograms of Flood Dragon blood essence in 3 days. The blood essence of Flood Dragons in Black Dragon Spirit Ring was the essence of all Flood Dragons that Ingzheng had killed over the years. Without Wu Qi's detailed guidance, Lu Chengfeng might go astray while channeling his energy. Before his body could be strengthened, he would become neither a man nor a dragon. That would be a real headache. While the two of them were having a heated discussion, the first batch of dancers had just retreated, and when the second batch of dancers were about to come up, a young man clad in a light cyan official robe and in high spirits abruptly rose from his seat and walked to the center of the hall. He bowed to Yen Dan in a loud and clear voice and said, "Your Majesty, I have something to say to Duke of Tunyan, Wu Qi." Yen Dan was taken aback. On the platform, Su Qin spat out a mouthful of wine and pointed at the young man. "Mu Yi, what are you doing?" The youngest son of Su Qin, 32 years old, Su Mai, the editor of National History of Great Yen Dynasty's Editing Academy, was a young scholar who spent all day singing about romance and painting. Only the core members of Great Yen Dynasty, such as Yen Dan, knew that Su Mai was also known as the ever-changing Yin and Yang. In some aspects, he was a genius who was even more monstrous than Su Qin. But geniuses were always freaks, and without a doubt, Su Mai was one of them. Su Mai's weirdness lay in the fact that he had a totally different understanding of the ways of the world, and he had offended many of his colleagues in Editing Academy. As one of the noblest civil officials in Great Yen Dynasty, Su Mai would often punch and kick his colleagues, and often curse them with foul language. If not because Su Qin was the chief editor of National History of Editing Academy, Su Mai would have long been kicked out of the imperial court by his colleagues. Su Qin felt a headache when he saw Su Mai, and Yen Dan felt even worse. Laughing dryly, Yen Dan shook his head at Su Qin, then smiled gently at Su Mai and asked, "Mai, do you have anything to say to Duke Tianyun?" "Hehe, both of you are talented young men, and it's a good time for you to get to know each other." Su Mai clapped his hands forcefully, giggled and said, "Your Majesty, my father is also the imperial advisor of Great Yen Dynasty. But all these years, he has been pretending to be ignorant and has even forgotten the identity of the imperial advisor. Because of that, I have to endure the anger of a bunch of useless fools in the editorial institute. My father has been telling me to keep a low profile, 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 and keep a low profile. Sigh, now that you've asked my father to come up here and drink with you, I don't think he needs to keep a low profile anymore." Yen Dan blinked his eyes quickly, staring at Su Mai, who seemed to have a one-track mind. With a wry smile, he said, "Yes. Da Qin is eyeing us like a tiger, and Great Yen Dynasty has to gather all its forces to face the enemy. Mr. Su, as the imperial advisor of Great Yen Dynasty, there's no need for you to hide in the imperial court anymore." Su Mai burst out into a loud laughter. He clapped his hands, then turned to those officials who sat behind you, Wendy, and said, "Did you hear that? Be more respectful to me in the future. Remember this face of mine, Su Mai. When I was born, I was conferred the title of Marquis. Damn it. I've tolerated all of you for too long." Just like Wu Qi, Su Mai cursed in front of Yen Dan and so many top-notch nobles of Great Yen Dynasty. Su Qin's old face turned red, just like a monkey's butt. Yet, Su Mai stuck out his chest proudly, turned to look at Wu Qi and said, "Duke Wu Qi, I have something to discuss with you. Whether you agree or not, you have to agree. In short, my niece has to marry no one but you." Wu Qi was struck dumb. No one but Wu Qi? Lu Chengfeng turned to look at Wu Qi with a shocked expression, lowered his voice and murmured, "You've offended a girl from Su clan?" On the dais, Princess Zhang Li had her eyes fixed on Wu Qi. A murderous gleam flickered in her eyes like the edge of a sword. When she saw the blank and shocked expression on Wu Qi's face, Princess Zhang Li knitted her brows and pondered for a brief moment. Immediately, the murderous gleam in her eyes grew stronger, and she fixed her gaze on Su Mai like a mad she-wolf. Su Qin even slapped on the table and cried out, "Mai, what nonsense are you talking about? What nonsense are you talking about? Your niece? Who are you talking about?" Su Mai tilted his head up, laughed complacently and said, "Of course, it's little Su. She is 14 years old now, and it's time for her to get married. I'll make the decision here and marry little Su to Duke of Tianyun. With that, Duke of Tianyun won't be able to offend Princess Zhang Li. Among all the young men of Great Yan Dynasty, which one of them can surpass me in terms of talent, character, appearance? If it's Princess Zhang Li, she'll marry no one but me." Su Qin sat stiffly on his knees on the dais. Looking at his expression, it seemed like he really wanted to strangle Su Mai right now. Yen Dan's body was shivering. He really wanted to turn his head and let out a wild laugh, but as the monarch of Great Yan Dynasty, he had to keep a straight face and hold back his laughter. Jing, Gao Jianli, Tian Guang, and the others stared at Su Mai as if they were looking at a ghost. Suddenly, Gao Jianli shook his head lightly and murmured under his breath, "Old Mr. Su Qin is a great man, but why is his youngest son an idiot? By marrying his youngest niece to Wu Qi, does that mean Wu Qi can't marry a princess? This is indeed a great strategy, an excellent strategy." Tian Guang said coldly, "This is the so-called drastic measures, a great strategy indeed." Initially, Yen Dan could still hold back his laughter, but when he heard Tian Guang's indescribably cold joke, he suddenly burst out into a wild laughter. All the ministers and generals in the grand hall stared at the complacent Su Mai with a dumbfounded expression. One after another, they bowed their heads, covered their faces with their sleeves, and started giggling. Yu Wendy and Yu Qianqian had a strange smile on their faces, bowing their heads and giggling as well. From the corner of their eyes, they were sneaking glances at Su Mai, who stood proudly in the center of the grand hall. Wu Qi shook his head helplessly. He rose to his feet, cupped his fist and bowed deeply to Su Qin, and said, "Old Mr. Wu Qi doesn't have any designs on your youngest granddaughter." Wu Qi breathed out a long sigh, turned to Su Mai and said, "Su Mai, Grandmother Su, why does Wu Qi want to marry your youngest niece? Have you asked your father about this? Have you asked your niece's father, who is also your elder brother? What does he think about this?" With a complacent expression, Su Mai took out a fan and slowly fanned himself, then said complacently, "First, why do you want to marry my youngest niece?" "Because my Su clan has proposed to you. With the mighty reputation of my father, if he wants to marry my daughter, who would dare to refuse?" Su Mai chuckled and continued, "Second, all these years, my father has never paid any attention to the affairs of the clan. All my elder brothers have been wholeheartedly cultivating in seclusion, studying the Tao of Yin and Yang transformation. Therefore, all the affairs of the clan are taken care of by me alone. It's just marrying my youngest niece, of course I can make the decision." Wu Qi clenched his teeth tightly and kept shaking his head. He did not even have the strength to laugh. This Su Mai might be a genius, but he was a simple-minded genius. For a man like him, there was no way to be serious with him. Wu Qi did not even have the mood to get angry with him. He just shook his head and sighed, then returned to his seat. On the dais, Princess Zhang Li stared at Su Mai with a strange look in her eyes, then cried out coldly, "Su Mai, why should I marry you? Even if your youngest niece wants to marry Wu Qi, putting aside whether he wants to marry her or not, why should I marry you when Wu Qi marries your youngest niece?" Su Mai turned to look at Princess Zhang Li with surprise, then asked, "If you don't marry me, Who else can Princess marry? Apart from Wu Qi, who else in Great Yan Dynasty can be more handsome than Mai? Who else can be more talented than Mai? He has an elegant demeanor, looks and talent, and comes from an excellent family. He is matchless. If Princess doesn't marry me, who else can she marry? Princess Zhonglu breathed out a heavy sigh, then grabbed a wine pot and gulped down half a liter of fine wine. When facing a man like Su Mai, even the arrogant Princess Zhonglu had lost her temper. Complacently, Su Mai clamored, "In the past, because of my father, I had to keep a low profile. I couldn't expose the background of my Su clan, I couldn't brag that my father is the imperial advisor of Great Yan Dynasty, and I couldn't brag that I'm already a marquis of Great Yan Dynasty when I was born. Therefore I, Su Mai, kept a low profile, and didn't want to expose my talents and knowledge in front of anyone." He breathed out a deep sigh and said, "Since it was His Majesty who exposed my father's identity today, don't blame me for acting in such a high-profile manner. Let me make it clear today, apart from Duke of Tianyun who can compose a beautiful poem and draw a beautiful painting, all the young men of Great Yan Dynasty are just a pile of trash in my heart. Apart from me, none of them are worthy of Princess Zhonglu." Wu Qi raised his head and gave Princess Zhonglu a smile. Princess Zhonglu winked at Wu Qi in a charming manner. Both of them kept exchanging glances with each other, neither of them taking Su Mai seriously. Upon seeing the current situation, Yan Dan and Su Qin both breathed out a sigh at the same time. While Su Qin, whose face was flushed with shame, was about to rise to his feet and scold Su Mai, a clear and sonorous voice suddenly rang out, "Brother Mai, you're wrong. Do you really think there is no one capable in the imperial court of Great Yan Dynasty? Princess Zhonglu is a celestial being. How can a scholar like you be worthy of Princess Zhonglu?" A young man clad in a Kirin battle robe walked slowly out from the ranks. He did not have an outstanding appearance, but he had a ferocious expression, and was shrouded in a murderous aura. Right after this young man rose to his feet, someone else rose from the seats and said, "Tiger Qin, idiot Su, Princess Zhonglu, none of you are worthy of her." A series of heavy footsteps rang out. A young man who stood nearly 10 feet tall and looked like an iron tower strode out from the ranks. He dropped to his knees before the dais and said, "Your Majesty, Fan Jinqi is willing to be the husband of Princess Zhonglu." Wu Qi gazed at these three men coldly. While he was about to say something, the five-colored divine ray behind Princess Zhongli's back suddenly rolled and rolled. A thunderbolt came crashing down from the ceiling of the grand hall, smashing heavily onto the three men's bodies. The electric arcs were blinding, and the thunderclaps were deafening. The three men howled miserably and fell to the ground. The grand hall was thrown into chaos. Chapter 210. Clenching his jaws tightly, Wu Qi fished out 100 heavy ballistae from the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. They were the armor-piercing ballistae which Yingzheng kept in the ring, and were specially made by Great Qin. They had the power to pierce through the body of nascent soul demon beasts. Using his divine will, he made the ballistae hover in midair, locking onto the coach of Yu clan that was approaching slowly from afar. Suddenly he changed his tone and shouted, "Tonight, Yu clan had paid the price for their nobility and detachment." Noiselessly, Wu Qi sprung out from underground. Like a ghost, he lightly attached himself to the bottom of the coach. He pressed his left ear against the bottom of the coach, and immediately, he could hear the voices of Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian clearly. Wu Qi felt his heart was twisting. What Yu Wendi said was destined to become a reality in the future. Yu Wendi smiled reservedly. He chuckled, then said in an indifferent tone, "I've been plotting for over 100 years, using Wei Merchant to make a few cracks on the impenetrable wall of Great Yan Dynasty. But before I could show my talent, the situation was already messed up by Wu Qi. Since this young man has ruined my plan, I should find some trouble for him." Yu Wendi said proudly, "That's the principle. All vassal kingdoms will no longer exist, and the monarchs of those vassal kingdoms will have to live in seclusion in Ji City. However, Great Yan Dynasty has no lack of civil officials to govern the local areas. Therefore, we have to appoint a large number of them to various places. On the other hand, 50% of the civil officials in Great Yan Dynasty, and even all the vassal kingdoms, are from Yu Academy. Once the vassal kingdoms no longer exist, these civil officials will be in control of the local areas, and that will bring us endless benefits. Wu Qi was traveling at top speed underground, following the faint scent of a seed of Qian Li Xiang that he had stuck on Yu Wendi's collar when the crowd was moving. Then, he found the coach that Yu Wendi and Yu Chanqian were riding in. Yu clan was a noble clan, and their coach was simple and elegant, emanating a strong air of antiquity. There were only a dozen guards of 30 to 40 years of Hotian realm standing next to the coach. The defense was almost non-existent. From time to time, he would stroke the 2 storage rings on his fingers. The heavy rings made Lu Chengfeng feel very secure, especially when he thought of the 15 kilograms of rare flood dragon blood in one of the rings. He felt a warmth in his heart. Jindan? He also had a chance to condense it into Jindan. The sound of fingers tapping on the wooden board could be heard. It seemed that Yu Wendi was deep in thought. Yu Chanqian's voice rang out again. Chanqian understands. With these people helping Yan Dan, and with the threat of Daqin, Great Yan Dynasty could not be shaken in a short period of time. It looks like Chanqian has no choice but to marry a handsome man like those elders. Let's see if Chanqian's children have the chance to stir up trouble in Great Yan. Just when he was pondering about the Yu family, he heard Yu Wendi ask indifferently, speaking of which, other than Su Mai and a few other archery targets, who else do you think can catch your eye? Helpless, Yan Dan could only reprimand Princess Zhang Lu, then he announced the end of the banquet. Yu Wendi chuckled and said, "Think about it. With your talent and knowledge, you should be able to guess it." Yu Chanqian sneered and said, "For so many years, we Yu family have been hiding our strength and biding our time, which has caused us to lose our vigor. If he is willing to become a member of Yu family, he will be able to give us more vigor and courage." However, everyone under the heaven knew that Yu family was the most noble family in Great Yan Dynasty, and they did not have any political enemies. Instead, they were the target that everyone wanted to rope in. They had a transcendent status, and even if they were traveling alone in the streets, they would not encounter any malicious assassins. The dozens of guards of Hotian realm were just for show. Yu family was the only family in Great Yan Dynasty that did not need any guards. Following the crowd, Wu Qi walked out of the imperial palace. Instead of riding on a horse, he boarded Lu Chengfeng's flying coach. Following Wu Qi's wild roar, a shrill and ear-splitting alarm suddenly rang out in the surroundings. After that, a very subtle divine will, which even Wu Qi could barely detect, swept across the surroundings. "There are no outsiders," said Yu Chanqian in a low voice. "Yan Dan, little punk, I've killed the clan leader of Yu family of Great Yan Dynasty today. I'll break one of your arms as a warning to others." Yu Chanqian pondered for a brief moment, then suddenly smiled and said, "Since Great Yan Dynasty has discovered a great amount of spatial breaching spirit gold, the rule of Great Yan Dynasty has become more direct and convenient. Therefore, the vassal kingdoms are no longer needed. Yan Dan will take this opportunity to eradicate the rebellious vassal kingdoms and weaken their power as much as possible. In the future, perhaps, he will completely abolish all the vassal kingdoms, divide them into counties, and set up a county to guard the herdsmen." Wu Qi saw the twisted faces of Su Qin, Fan Yuqi, and Qin Weiyang. When Su Qin and Fan Yuqi returned, they would definitely teach their useless sons and grandsons a harsh lesson. As for Qin Weiyang's twisted face, Wu Qi had no idea what was the reason behind it. Perhaps he was jealous of Princess Zhang Lu for not giving face to Qin clan? In any case, Wu Qi had decided that he would often find some fun for Qin Weiyang in the future. As for Great Yan Dynasty, they valued the inheritance of the Tao of Master the most. A master for a day, a father for life. "Is there any outsider around?" Yu Wendi asked in a low voice. Escorted by numerous guards, the flying coach drove through 2 streets. Then, right in front of Lu Chengfeng, Wu Qi transformed his body into a stream of green and yellow energy, penetrated through the bottom of the flying coach, plunged into the ground, and vanished without a trace. It was as if Lu Qingfeng didn't notice the unusual movement of Wu Qi. With a faint smile on his face, he waved a small carving knife and slowly carved some fine runes on a pillar. The divine will, which was so subtle that even Wu Qi could barely sense, spread out and filled the surroundings. Yu Qianqian said softly, "Your plan is perfect. Su Mai, Fan Jinqi, and Qi Nihu are fighting for Princess Zhonglu. What a wonderful plan." A series of rattling noises rang out. 100 ballistae tore through the air soundlessly, dragging long tails of light behind them as they shot towards the flying coach. The dozens of guards and mounts of Yu clan did not even have the chance to let out a cry before they were crushed into meat paste by the frightening power of the ballistae. Wu Qi took a deep breath soundlessly. He sneered in his mind, "So, this is the true face of Yu clan?" But there was one thing that Wu Qi could not understand. Why did Yu clan spend so much effort to stir up trouble in Great Yan Dynasty? Was it just for fun? The muscles on Wu Qi's arm tightened, and he abruptly plunged into the ground. In just a blink of an eye, he had reappeared at the end of the street 3,000 feet away. Yu Wendi sighed lightly, smiled bitterly and said, "Yan Dan is not a simple man. For generations, Yu clan has been stirring up major events under the heaven, trying to plunge Great Yan Dynasty into chaos. But in the end, the efforts of our ancestors were all turned into nothingness by Yan Dan with various methods. This time, after 100 years of hard work, Yu clan has finally achieved some results. But little did I expect that Yan Dan would use an open and above-board scheme to destroy all our plans." Wu Qi's hair stood up one after another. If not for him concealing his aura with a mystic technique found in Scroll of Stealing, any ordinary escape art of 5 elements would have long been discovered by this divine will. It seemed that this divine will was specially produced to target all kinds of escape arts and mystic techniques. It was similar to the divine abilities found in Scroll of Stealing, such as the Heavenly Vision, Earth-Hearing Grand Magic, which could detect all kinds of subtle and abnormal existences. Yu Wendi breathed out long and short sighs for a while, then solemnly said, "Qianqian, through this incident, you have to learn something. Crafty plots and schemes can give you a temporary advantage. But only by using an open and above-board scheme, using the overall situation, and using an unstoppable and powerful force to threaten others, can you truly gain the final advantage." For Yu clan, selecting officials from these people to oversee the affairs of the Great Yan Dynasty was definitely much better than those vassals who had their own clan's benefits and legacy. Those vassal monarchs could not give Yu clan any face, but the members of Yu clan would definitely provide the greatest convenience and benefits to Yu clan. The mighty army of Daqin will arrive at the city gate in a few days. Ministers of Great Yan, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and surrender. Throwing away the carving knife, he lifted the curtain and looked out at the dark night that was filled with wind and snow. Then, Lu Qingfeng said in a low voice, "Wu Qi, I've told you before, you and I are brothers, and we will share wealth and honor together. Qingfeng owes you too much. You and I, we are true brothers." Just like the first imperial banquet that Wu Qi attended, the banquet ended hastily. 3 unlucky fellows, who thought highly of themselves and had expressed their feelings to Princess Zhonglu, were severely wounded by the thunderbolts unleashed by the enraged Princess Zhonglu. If not for the timely treatment from the imperial physicians, these 3 fellows could have changed their occupation and become the subordinates of Ma Yi, the inner minister of Great Yan. Nowadays, those young men of Great Yan are really useless. Yu Su and the others, although they have the beautiful titles of Silver Flood Dragon, Qilin, and Fierce Tiger, they are merely toys in the palm of our hands. They are not considered as outstanding talents. Yu Qianqian sighed softly and said, "If there is one man who can make Qianqian like him, Wu Qi is the only one. Although he is a little young and he has an ambiguous relationship with Zhonglu, he is a very good writer of calligraphy and painting, and he also has some wonderful poems in his mind. His cultivation base and conduct are not bad as well, and he has a cruel and merciless character. He is the best supplement for Yu clan now." Princess Zhonglu, who had the cultivation base of early-stage nascent soul realm in her 20s, was regarded as the one and only peerless genius of Great Yan Dynasty. Although Princess Zhonglu was born with the cultivation base of Xiantian realm, she only had the cultivation base of early-stage Jindan realm now. Yu Chanqian, who was over 10 years older than Princess Zhonglu, had formed her nascent soul. On top of that, she often held all kinds of poetry and painting meetings, and often traveled with those scholars. Basically, she did not have the time to cultivate in seclusion. Yu Chanqian asked in a low voice, "Are there any opportunities in the near future?" With the appearance of the 5 demon kings, Mod, Sun Kuang, Su Qin, Han Fei, and many other spies have revealed themselves. With that, Yen Dan's reputation has skyrocketed. For the past 100 years, all the methods we've laid out are useless in the face of an absolute strength. Our 100 years of painstaking effort has gone down the drain. With these men, Yen Dan can at least maintain the stability of the imperial court for another 500 years. If we, Yu clan, want to strike again, we'll have to find a way to strike from these 5 demon kings, Mod, Sun Kuang, and the others. Wu Qi could not help but sneer. Everyone in Great Yen Dynasty thought that Yu clan was a noble clan that was passed down from generation to generation. But, could a truly noble clan possess such a miraculous technique? When Yu Chanqian unleashed her aura and used the mystic technique, Wu Qi could immediately sense her true overall strength, early-stage nascent soul realm. Yu Wendi answered with a deep voice, "It's good that you can think in this way. Now is a good opportunity. In the future, the foundation of your child will definitely be stronger than the one we have now. That will give him a greater chance to succeed, and he will be able to get more training." After a long period of silence in the coach, Yu Chanqian's voice was clearly transmitted into Wu Qi's ears. Chapter 211. Shrill alarms were ringing in all directions, while dazzling beams of light kept shooting towards them from the surrounding city walls. The muffled footsteps of the city defense army came from afar like thunderclaps, adding a strong sense of uneasiness to the dark night. A great number of dark blue shadows kept rising from all directions. The sky patrolling Eagle Guards had taken control of the sky. Sword beams were wheeling around the sky patrolling Eagle Guards, as some cultivators had begun to deploy their defenses in the sky. The chariot of Yu clan exploded, as a sheet of pure and rich golden light enveloped Yu Wendi and Yu Chanqian, dazzling yet not dazzling like molten gold. Within the golden light, over 30 pale golden magical crossbows, which had the same thickness as ordinary bolts, and were only a few times longer, were mounted in the center of the golden light. The bolts were spinning at a high speed, while the friction between the bolts and the golden light produced a screeching noise that could cause severe pain to one's eardrums. One of the bolts had pierced deep into Yu Wendi's right chest. Tightly bound by the golden light, the bolt hovered in the middle of his right chest in a stagnant manner. The spinning bolts had caused a severe injury to Yu Wendi's body. A bowl-sized wound was opened up on his right chest, and the strong wind brought up by the spinning bolts was still tearing off thin pieces of flesh from the wound. Yu Wendi, who had lived a comfortable life and never suffered any hardship, had fainted because of the pain. Perhaps he had never even tasted the pain of having his hand pricked by an embroidery needle. If not for Yu Chanqian holding her father up with one hand, perhaps Yu Wendi would have already fallen to the ground. Holding a talisman that glowed with a golden gleam, as if it was composed entirely of golden flames, Yu Chanqian bellowed furiously, "You thieves of Daqin, Yu Chanqian, will fight you to the death." Wu Qi kept the magical crossbow into his storage ring, took out a cloak and wrapped it around his hands, then put on a pair of gloves to cover his hands, covering his entire body without exposing even the slightest bit of his skin and flesh. He sneered and said, "What a tough mouth you have, little girl. When I, Daqin, arrive with my mighty army, I'd like to see how you are going to fight us to the death. Hee, at that time, I'd like to see if your little mouth can still be so tough." While laughing with a hint of lust, Wu Qi exerted all his strength to activate the 2 false cores of fire element in his stealing heaven meridians. All the enormous energies contained in the other 8 false cores and the false core in his dantian rushed into these 2 fire element false cores, transforming the energies in Wu Qi's body into the purest fire element false cores. A towering flame soared from his body, transforming into a gold core strange sign that measured several tens of feet in circumference behind his back. As his mind flickered, the gold core strange sign behind him gradually took shape. Shockingly, it turned out to be a fire qilin with distinct scales and a lively expression. The 30-feet-long qilin rubbed its fists and palms together as it galloped ceaselessly in the raging flames. Its red horns and silver whiskers were glowing with a dazzling light that lit up the surrounding area for a few miles. With a single step, he crossed a distance of 1,000 feet, exercised the dragon transformation script, and punched Yu Qianqian's golden defensive barrier with all his might. A body tempering technique like the dragon transformation script could allow one's fleshly body to unleash an offensive force several times stronger than the original strength. It was just like how Bai Qitian, with the overall strength of Jindan realm, could unleash a mighty force that was not weaker than the Dharma body of an earth immortal. As Wu Qi had attained a minor achievement in the cultivation of the dragon transformation script, he had condensed all his strength into one, and exerted the full force of the dragon's defensive force technique. His right fist smashed down like a falling meteor, carrying a force of 1,000,000 kilograms. A golden light flashed as a row of purple runes, the size of a water tank, flashed amidst the golden light. Soundlessly, an indescribably great counterforce was sent back to Wu Qi's body. Suddenly, a few bloody wounds appeared on the skin of his right arm, while his bones and muscles were letting out tiny moans and groans under the tremendous counterforce. Wu Qi could not help but give Yu Qianqian, who was enshrouded in the golden light, a great shock. The power of this talisman was actually comparable to the strongest thunder talisman of Heavenly Spirit sect, as it could actually unleash a defensive strength equal to that of an early-stage nascent divinity cultivator wielding a magical treasure. Suddenly, the purple runes emerged, shattering the over 30 bolts that were spinning rapidly amidst the golden light. Yu Qianqian bit the tip of her tongue and sprayed a mouthful of blood onto the talisman. Immediately, the talisman shone with a blinding golden light, while twisting and twisting golden beams kept rushing out from it. Gradually, they condensed into a vague figure, about 3 inches tall and holding a strange-shaped longsword, hovering above Yu Qianqian's head. Abruptly, the tiny golden figure raised the longsword up high and swung it casually towards Wu Qi. A sheet of golden flame shot whistling out, slashing towards Wu Qi's face. The speed of the sword beam was indescribably fast. Wu Qi could only see a golden flash before his eyes, and in the next moment, the golden sword beam had arrived right in front of him. If it were Wu Qi before he started cultivating the dragon transformation script, he would never be able to dodge this sword beam. Fortunately, he had made some progress in cultivating the dragon transformation script recently. With that, he quickly changed the direction of his feet and exercised the 9 transformations of Divine Dragon, which was specially used for fighting enemies. Abruptly, his body transformed into several dozens of twisting afterimages, spreading out amidst the whistling of wind. The golden sword beam swept across the afterimages, turning a large piece of cloth on his chest into ashes. The golden sword beam shot straight along the street, destroying a large part of the city wall of Ji City a few miles away, which was already glowing with a strong defensive barrier. The tens of city walls inside and outside of Ji City formed an integrated defense system. When a section of the city wall was destroyed, the defensive barrier on the other city walls immediately changed. A bright flame soared up into the sky, while a great amount of defensive barrier light burst out from the shattered city wall. Gradually, it condensed into a city wall made of pure magical power and natural energies. Yu Qianqian's face turned slightly pale. She cried out in a low voice and spat out another mouthful of blood onto the talisman. Wu Qi snorted coldly and cried out, "Little girl, you are really lucky to have such a treasure talisman with you. Hehe, who is the old fool who spent his own blood essence to make this treasure talisman for you? Next time, I'll definitely slaughter every single member of your Yu clan. Hehe, I can send you back to the field headquarters and let His Majesty pamper you." He let out a few strange laughs, as a wave of anger rushed straight into Wu Qi's head. How dare this girl have the intention to touch him? he cried out viciously, "Girl, you have neither a beautiful face nor a sexy body. Even if the lamp is turned off at night, no man will be willing to press on you." However, His Majesty is a man of great talent and bold vision, and His Majesty doesn't mind pampering a so-called talented girl like you once in a while. This is a great favor from His Majesty, and you must remember to express your gratitude. Yu Qianqian's face turned green with anger. She was a woman with neither a beautiful face nor a sexy body that no one wanted. Only a man of great talent and bold vision, the emperor of Qin dynasty, would pamper her once in a while? Wu Qi's words were too harsh, as they were destroying Yu Qianqian's pride as a woman. Her face twisted. With the power of the blood essence she spat out just now, she once again activated the magical force contained in the golden talisman. A great amount of golden electric arcs burst out from the talisman, condensing into a golden ball of thunder the size of a human head above Yu Qianqian's head. Right after Wu Qi revealed his true form from the afterimages, Yu Qianqian's eyes immediately locked onto his body with a subtle divine will. Amidst a deep rumble of thunder, the thunderball transformed into a 1-foot-long thunderhammer, spraying countless blinding electric arcs and smashing down towards Wu Qi's head. Right after the thunderhammer was unleashed, a few long and furious roars were heard coming from the direction of Great Yen Imperial Palace. 5 demon kings, Mod, Sun Kuang, and the rest of them had joined hands and leaped into a several dozens of miles-long rainbow, bringing with them a frightening and suffocating aura as they approached at top speed. Among the 5 demon kings, Huo Wu was the most ferocious and bloodthirsty. After being conferred the title of Imperial Advisor of Great Yen Dynasty, he had regarded Great Yen Dynasty as his own territory. Therefore, when Wu Qi brazenly attacked and killed the current clan leader of Yu clan in his territory, it had made a wild and crazy killing intent burn in Huo Wuyu's heart. When he was still a few miles away from Wu Qi, Huo Wuyu had already bellowed furiously, "Ignorant junior, this is not a place where you can come and go as you please. I know." Then he opened his mouth and shot out a greenish and gloomy light screen, silently rolling down towards Wu Qi's head. The light screen emitted a pungent stench, and came with a frightening corrosive and devouring force. Vaguely, one could see the twisted faces of millions of wronged souls vaguely visible within it. It was the rotting bone and soul-devouring energy, a divine ability of the lineage of the ancient ferocious bird, the bald owl. It was one of the few vicious and sinister things under the heaven. When Wu Qi saw the death-devouring energy coming down from above, he dared not to face it head-on. He let out a few strange laughs, gave a reluctant look at the father and daughter of Yu clan, who were enshrouded in the golden light. Then, with a blink of his body, he transformed into a beam of red light and plunged into the ground. The thunder hammer smashed forcefully onto the ground. Amidst a loud boom, a nearly 1,000 feet tall thunderbolt swept out in all directions like a tsunami, nearly razing a few nearby mansions to the ground. Soundlessly, the rotting bone and soul-devouring energy swept across the ground, bringing countless snowflakes along with it. Abruptly, a large pit with a diameter of over 100 feet and a depth of nearly 100 miles was created on the ground. The corrosive force of Huo Wuyu's death-devouring energy was very strong. With just a light touch, the street of Ji City, which was densely covered with countless restrictive spells, was corroded and left a deep pit. Right after Wu Qi plunged into the ground, he was nearly hit by the death-devouring energy. Fortunately, his escape art was very fast, allowing him to escape with just a few leaps. Luckily, he was not hit by the extremely vicious death-devouring energy. With a terrified expression, Wu Qi turned to look at the large pit behind him, then silently recited the name of the bald owl, Huo Wuyu. Shaking his head, he flew back to Lu Qingfeng's flying chariot. The cultivation base of a demon king of nascent divinity realm was indeed frightening. Huo Wuyu was also a man who only needed to transcend one last heaven immortal tribulation before he could become a heaven immortal. Therefore, Wu Qi did not feel ashamed when he was chased away by him. With the miraculous ability of Scroll of Stealing, Wu Qi was confident that when he cultivated to the mastery stage of nascent soul realm, he would be able to fight evenly with Huo Wuyu. Considering all the various divine abilities and techniques he possessed now, they were not any weaker than this rotting bone and soul-devouring energy. After returning to Lu Qingfeng's flying chariot, Wu Qi took off the torn cloak, took out a spare set of court clothes and put it on. Then he turned to Lu Qingfeng, who had an anxious expression on his face, and said, "Be careful of Yu Qianqian and her father. They are not good people. Their Yu clan has been stirring up trouble in Great Yan Dynasty, and I have no idea what they are up to. Just now, I borrowed the name of Daqin to assassinate them, but too bad, they were protected by talisman treasures, and I couldn't kill them." Lu Qingfeng knitted his brows into a tight frown and said in a low voice, "If there is something wrong with Yu clan, then this Yu Academy." Wu Qi looked at Lu Qingfeng, shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, "Without any evidence, I can't do anything to them. In the future, I'll find a chance and kill every single member of Yu clan. I really hate this kind of bastards who always strike from the back, but never let a single drop of water leak out, and make the whole world treat them as the good guys." Lu Qingfeng nodded his head, agreeing with Wu Qi's words. If not because of Wu Qi's marvelous escape art, which rendered Yu Qianqian's divine ability, which specialized in detecting all kinds of escape arts ineffective, perhaps he would never be able to eavesdrop on some private secrets of Yu clan. This Yu clan had concealed themselves too deeply. The chariot returned to Duke Yen Li's mansion at top speed. Because of the assassination attempt by Wu Qi, Ji City had been placed under a curfew. All the influential members and ministers who were still out and about were asked to return to their mansions as soon as possible. On top of that, the captains of city defense also asked all the influential members to return to their mansions and take precautions, as the assassins from Daqin Dynasty had sneaked into Ji City and severely wounded the current head of Yu clan, Yu Wendi. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were talking in low voices along the way. Right when they arrived at the entrance of the front hall, through the widely open door, they suddenly saw Yan Qijuan and Qin Weiyang sitting calmly in the middle of the hall, holding a wine cup in their hands and drinking. What was the crown prince of Great Yan Dynasty, Yan Qijuan, and the general of Great Yan Dynasty, Qin Weiyang? Why were they here at this time? Chapter 212. Quickly changing his robe, he invited Yan Qijuan and Qin Weiyang to the parlor in the backyard, which was specially used to entertain private guests. The parlor was surrounded by a large number of screens made from crystals. The ground was scorching hot, and the steam was rising from it, preventing the parlor from feeling the coldness of the outside world. The cold wind brought the heavy snow and hit the screens, causing them to produce a series of rattling noises. High up in the sky, sword beams and sky patrolling eagle guards were seen wheeling and falling from the sky like a large number of shooting stars, adding a sense of mystery to this cold winter night. Naturally, the best wine that could be found in Duke Yen Li's mansion was used to entertain the honorable guests like Yan Qijuan and Qin Weiyang. It was the first Duke Yen Lu who had buried several thousand wine jars under the cypress green mist vines in the backyard, and now, the wine had become the most excellent wine. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng personally dug out a few large wine jars from under the cypress green mist vines, which no one had touched for a long time. They mixed the sticky wine paste in them with the freshly brewed wine, then used a small wine pot to boil them in hot water, filling the entire parlor with the aroma of wine. Yan Qijuan's handsome face twitched a little, and he rubbed his palms. Yan Buji, that little rascal, had been guarding these drunken immortal wine with his life, refusing to let go of it. I couldn't even get a share of it, and now, my wish has finally come true. It was his son who dug it out and boiled it for me. When I see him in the future, I'll definitely mock him. Yan Qijuan chuckled, picked up the small wine cup, and slowly savored the fragrant aroma of the drunken immortal wine into his mouth. Qin Weiyang, on the other hand, was not so particular. He had already held a wine jar in his arms and was drinking to his heart's content, leaving his entire body stained with wine. Upon hearing Yan Qijuan's words, Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were struck dumb with amazement. Both men exchanged a glance, then Wu Qi forced a smile and said, "What Crown Prince said seems to be. Does Crown Prince still see Duke Buji often? Doesn't that mean he was killed by someone in the myriad Red River?" Yan Qijuan clenched the wine cup and laughed. He shook his head and said, "Killed? Hee hee, Wu Qi, you should know what cultivation technique my father is cultivating with, don't you?" Wu Qi recalled the time when he was in Mo Forest, when Mod used the flame of Earth's core to break open the stone tablets of legacy left behind by barbarians, and found a few cultivation techniques from them. Among them were the mnemonics for the last 2 chapters of Yen Dan's cultivation method. He remembered that Yen Dan's cultivation method was called the reincarnation of 9 deaths and 9 lives. Abruptly, he raised his head up and stared at Yan Qijuan with great astonishment as he said, "The reincarnation of 9 deaths and 9 births? 9 deaths and 9 births. This..." Yan Qijuan breathed out a long sigh in frustration, then sneered and said, "That's exactly the damned technique." The 9 deaths and 9 lives reincarnation technique allowed one to comprehend the great Tao of heaven and earth between life and death, gathering the samsara chi of life and death to condense an extraordinary saint body that was neither dead nor alive. This was the essence of this technique. If you want to cultivate this cultivation technique to a profound level, you must comprehend life and death, and work on that line of balance between life and death. Pointing his finger at his own nose mockingly, Yan Qijuan said in a self-mocking tone, "Yan Qijuan, the crown prince of Great Yen, is said to be less than 1,000 years old, but in fact he is over 2,000 years old. His cultivation base is at the peak of Jin Dan realm, and he hasn't even broken through nascent soul realm. Father and the others have inner demons, so they can't break through. Yan Qijuan is a man with peerless innate talent. But why is he still a mere human immortal of Jin Dan after cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years? Shaking his head, Yan Qijuan smiled bitterly and said, "As the crown prince of Great Yen, I can't always be assassinated by others, and I can't have any accidents happen to me. I have to sit on the throne of crown prince peacefully, letting all the common people and all the civil and military officials know that Great Yen is in a peaceful and prosperous era. Father Emperor can go into seclusion and fight against demonic beasts. He can be beaten by demonic beasts until his limbs are broken and he has a slim chance of surviving. He can comprehend the Tao of life and death. But as the crown prince, I can't do that. I have to guard Ji City like a clay statue, and I have to stay here peacefully." Spreading his palms helplessly, Yan Qijuan breathed out a long sigh and said, "This reincarnation technique of 9 deaths and 9 lives is such a bastard. Without experiencing life and death, one's cultivation base can never improve. I've been cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years, and I've consumed countless spirit herbs and Jin Dan. Hee hee, after cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years, I've only reached the peak of Jin Dan realm. Damn it." Yan Qijuan cursed out loud. Apparently, he had suffered a great grievance. Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng exchanged a glance, and neither of them answered the question. Qin Weong put down the wine urn, wiped his mouth and said with a smile, "Yen Buji was indeed assassinated in the Myriad Red River. Not only in the Myriad Red River, when he was roaming around the world, seducing women from all over the world. Countless men who were offended by him had sent out assassins to kill him, but what was the result? In just a short span of tens of years, he was severely wounded and nearly killed 8 times, and suffered countless other minor injuries. Just half a year ago, after the assassination in the Myriad Red River, he successfully broke through the peak of Jin Dan realm and became an earth immortal of nascent soul realm." Yan Qijuan said coldly, "According to the law of Great Yen, once a member of the imperial clan of Great Yen forms his nascent soul, he has to go into secluded cultivation and become a sinecure of Cloud Swallow Pavilion. Therefore, Yen Buji seized the opportunity to escape with the excuse of death, and at the same time, he could draw out some evil spirits, causing them to have a good time." Wu Qi laughed dryly and said, "So, who was the one who assassinated Duke Buji? Why did he assassinate him? The cause and effect of everything." Qin Weong spread his palms, smiled bitterly and said, "It was all a fucking show, a show for those who were watching the show. Including that unlucky fellow of mine, Qin Qingshui. Although he is indeed not a good guy, it was really hard for him to play the role of a complete bastard, who was not a bad guy at all. The intense coldness had rendered Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng speechless. Both of them looked at each other in astonishment, and their bodies stiffened. If the death of Yan Buji, the chaotic situation after his death, and the difficult situation faced by Qin Qingshui and Wu Qi were all an act, Wu Qi could not help but curse all 18 generations of Yan Dan's ancestors in his heart. It was really a great blow to him that he did not even realize he was being played by someone else. Fortunately, Wu Qi was secretly delighted in his heart. He had gained a lot of benefits and he had played a lot of people, but they did not realize it either. You play me, I play you, each other. Perhaps, the only unlucky ones were Wei Xiaoxiao and those vassal kingdoms who had colluded with her. They were really unlucky. Then Qin Qingshui thought of Princess Ying Chuan, and then he thought of Lao Ai who was standing behind her. No wonder Yan Dan always looked calm and composed. When Wu Qi told Jing Ku about the information regarding Lao Ai, Yan Dan actually waited until now to force Lao Ai out. What a wide net. No wonder he was Yan Dan, the man who had ruled Great Yan Dynasty for over 2,000 years. Wu Qi picked up the wine cup and emptied it in one gulp. After that, he gave Yan Qijuan and Qin Weiyang a thumbs up and said, "What a meticulous plan, not leaving any chance for the enemy. Sigh, if I knew this would happen, why did Wu Qi go through so much trouble? Why did I have to make so many enemies? Let me see, Wei Merchant, Heavenly Spirit Sect, Myriad Dao Alliance, several dozens of monarchs of vassal kingdoms, Chief General Yu Yi, and ever-changing Yin and Yang Su Mai. Who did I offend?" Yan Qijuan laughed again. He shook his head and said, "Yu Yi and Su Mai can be at ease. Su Mai may be a simpleton, but old Mr. Su Qin has a very strict upbringing. No matter how arrogant and rebellious he is, he will never do something like that in the Grand Hall. As for Yu Su," an immense killing intent burst out from his eyes, as Yan Qijuan gnashed his teeth and said, "Yu Su deserves to die. Great Yan has given him so much, yet he still colluded with foreign enemies and schemed against Great Yan. This is a crime deserving of 10,000 deaths. Chief General Yu Yi will not hold a grudge against you because of this. You can rest assured. As for Yu Su, he has to die." Lu Chengfeng cleared his throat, bowed at Yan Qijuan and said, "So, everything is." Yan Qijuan said coldly, "Everything is for others to see. Chief General Yu Yi will send out endless death soldiers to assassinate Marquis Tianyun. You just need to kill them all. Those death soldiers are men who deserve to die. By killing them all, you will be rendering a meritorious service to the empire." Lu Chengfeng still wanted to ask something, but Wu Qi beat him to it and asked straightforwardly, "Why are you telling us so much?" Qin Weiyang said with a deep voice, "Because Yan Qingfeng is now the chief supervisor of Westfield headquarter of Great Yan. He has to guard the headquarter with a peace of mind, and there are some things that he has to explain clearly. In short, you only need to know one thing: Great Yan Dynasty is as stable as a mountain. No matter it is His Majesty, Jing Ku, Gao Jianli, Yi, Tianguang, or me, Qin Weiyang, there is no disagreement. We are always standing together." Qin Weiyang smiled proudly, then continued in an indifferent tone, "We came here together, fought together for over 2,000 years, risked our lives together, and finally created the foundation of Great Yan Dynasty. In the future, we will make Great Yan Dynasty stronger and stronger, so strong that we can unify the entire world. So, how can we fight amongst ourselves and split apart? It's just that some people wish to see us fight amongst ourselves, to see us split apart. Therefore, we will fight amongst ourselves and split apart for them to see." Yan Qijuan sneered and said, "We will let them see what they want to see, and then we will take away their wealth and their lives. There is nothing better than this." Taking a deep breath, Yan Qijuan stretched out his hand to Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng and said, "Your performance in the past few months has won our unanimous approval. Although you are still a little immature, you can be of great use. Therefore, welcome to Great Yan." "Welcome to Great Yan." Wu Qi looked at Yan Qijuan, and Lu Chengfeng looked at Yan Qijuan. Both men exchanged a glance, then stretched out their hands and held Yan Qijuan's hand. Qin Weiyang laughed out loud, then stretched out his hand and gave both men's palms a heavy slap. With a faint smile on his face, Yan Qijuan said, "You can continue to fight with whoever you want. You can continue to be on good terms with whoever you want. 8 days later, it will be a good and auspicious day. Chengfeng, you will go to Great Yan Ancestral Shrine and pay your respects to our ancestors. You will be officially listed in the genealogy. You should go and meet Yan Buji as well. That guy is really disgusting for sowing seeds everywhere, but no matter what, he is your biological father." Yan Qijuan twitched his lips, as if he was very dissatisfied with Yan Buji. They had a secret conversation throughout the night. Some things that should be understood by Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng, and some things that should be known by them, had been understood by them. Wu Qi even knew that the reason why he and Lu Chengfeng could win the approval of Yan Dan and the others so quickly was not only because of MOD's comments, but also because he had the token of 8 swallows in his hand, yet he had never used it to do anything with special privileges. Although they held great power in their hands, they never acted recklessly. This had given Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng great credit. Therefore, they had won the unanimous approval of these core ministers of Great Yan Dynasty. When dawn was about to break, Yan Qijuan and Qin Weang bade farewell and left. Then Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng saw them off. When they stepped into their chariot, it seemed like Yan Qijuan suddenly remembered something. He smiled at Wu Qi and said, "Now that you are one of us, I won't plot against you for that piece of innate earth element essence you obtained in the Rare Treasures Conference. Those useless fools are really hateful. How could they not recognize an innate item? That is really annoying." Qin Weang shook his head and sighed. "If not because we also found several dozens of innate items when we came out from this world, we really can't let you have it so easily." He glared fiercely at Wu Qi and Yan, then said with a cold voice, "That thing is too tempting. Quickly find a way to eat it, or else you will have a headache later. That Zhang Yi knows you have this treasure." Surrounded by a large number of guards, both men left. Wu Qi, on the other hand, was stunned as he watched them leave. When they came to this world, they found several dozens of innate items. What kind of damned world was this? Chapter 213. After being officially accepted into the core circle of Great Yan Dynasty, in the following few days, Lu Chengfeng devoted himself to absorbing the flood dragon blood essence, carefully tempering his fleshly body with the body tempering technique of flood dragon. With the help of Wu Qi, he planned to forcibly form the Jin Dan with the mystic technique of energy seizing. Meanwhile, through a teleportation formation, Wu Qi came to a secret cave located in the depth of Meng Mountains, where he took out the innate earth element energy essence he bought in the Rare Treasures Conference and the 36 dragon scales given to him by Catfish Flood Dragon. Just like what Yan Qijuan and Qin Weang said, these innate items were too eye-catching, and it was better for him to digest them as soon as possible. Generally speaking, when an ordinary cultivator found an innate item, he or she did not have the ability to craft it into a magical treasure. They could only bring these innate items with them, using the stray innate energies to temper their fleshly body, transforming their fleshly body into an innate body of Tao. In other words, it could be considered as using the innate items as much as possible. Unless one possessed the cultivation base of a gold immortal, or had the help of an innate divine flame, no ordinary cultivator, or even a heaven immortal, could craft an innate item into a magical treasure. Fortunately, Wu Qi was lucky enough to find the divine flame of order. Although he could not control it as he wished, with a little bit of firepower and some mystic techniques found in Scroll of Stealing, he could still craft a usable magical treasure. Wu Qi weighed the clump of innate earth element energy essence in his hand, then used his divine will to sense the faint ripple of soul coming from the tiny crystal core in its center. He breathed out a deep sigh. It was indeed an innate divine item, as it had already given birth to a thread of its own soul. If this clump of innate earth element energy essence was not taken out from the spirit cave by the people from the merchant, perhaps many years later, it would give birth to a very powerful innate spirit treasure, or even a mighty innate divine beast. But now, as Wu Qi wanted to craft this clump of innate energy essence into a magical treasure that he could use, he could not keep this thread of soul. Innate items were extremely difficult to craft, and if there was still a thread of innate soul entangled in it, no one could subdue this thread of innate soul unless he was a high-tier gold immortal. What a pity, what a pity! Wu Qi sighed, then laughed again. Fortunately. Amidst a five-colored gleam, the silver lotus shot out from between Wu Qi's brows. A wisp of divine flame of order, which was several times stronger than before, was twisting and drifting on its pistil. The surrounding temperature rose abruptly, driving away all the other natural energies in the secret cave, leaving only the pure fire element energy, which was at least 1,000 times denser. The air turned bright red. When Wu Qi took a deep breath, he felt as if he had swallowed a ball of sticky magma. His entire body was boiling hot and uncomfortable. After fiddling with the clump of earth element energy essence for a while, Wu Qi resolutely threw it into the divine flame of order. Abruptly, that tiny crystal core let out a high-pitched shriek. That wisp of pre-world soul abruptly released a dense soul wave, which was filled with despair and begging, as if there was a child crying and begging in Wu Qi's mind. Wu Qi hardened his heart and refused to be moved by the voice. Casually, he pointed his finger at the divine flame of order. Immediately, the innate wood element energy transformed into a bright green beam and shot out from his fingertip, fusing with the divine flame of order in a blink of an eye. Immediately, the flame expanded to the height of 3 feet. The surrounding fire element energies quickly gathered towards the divine flame of order, raising its temperature by another 50%. Abruptly, the earth element energy essence moved. Countless tiny yellow sand particles wheeled and wheeled rapidly in the air, transforming into a ring of dense yellow mist that firmly protected the crystal core in the middle. A divine item was formed by nature, and it already had its own consciousness. If anyone wanted to kill it, it would automatically exercise its innate divine ability to protect itself. Watching this, Wu Qi clicked his tongue in amazement. If not for the fact that he was still 108,000 years away from that realm, he would really like to keep this clump of earth element energy essence and craft it into a magical treasure when he became a gold immortal in the future. With the cultivation base of a gold immortal, it was more than enough to subdue this soul and refine it into the item spirit of an innate spirit treasure. Anyone below the realm of gold immortal should never dream of such a sweet dream. Sighing, Wu Qi quickly performed some incantation gestures with both hands. A set of seal of earth from the script of ancient law, which possessed the mighty power to split the mountains and split the earth, quickly formed into 99 sesame-sized yellow runes on his fingertips, emanating a blinding yellow light. His fingertips trembled rapidly as the yellow talisman smashed towards the earth element energy essence along with a deafening rumble of a landslide. It disturbed the originally flawless and dense yellow mist, causing a tiny crack to appear on it. The divine flame of order, with 2 colors of green and purple, rushed into the crack, enveloped the tiny crystal core in a flash, and annihilated the innate soul essence in a flash. Bright patterns that were visible to naked eyes rushed out from the spot where the crystal core was annihilated. An extremely pure source of soul energy was surging violently, spreading out in all directions along with a faint whistling noise. Abruptly, Wu Qi focused his eyes. Wisps of divine gleam shot out from his mystic eyes of universe, quickly absorbing the source of soul energy into his eyes and fusing it into his spiritual ocean and soul. A thick and dense nourishing aura kept coming from the depths of his soul. The innate soul condensed from the innate earth element energy essence had the property of earth element as well. After absorbing the source of soul energy, not only did Wu Qi's soul become a few times stronger, his soul itself had also become as solid and heavy as a lofty mountain and could no longer be shaken by any external force. The 7 holy deities and devils, which were transformed from Wu Qi's soul, were cheering and jumping with joy. They had also absorbed a great amount of source energy, and their vague figures had become much clearer. Vaguely, they looked like 7 other Wu Qis, who were jumping and jumping in his spiritual ocean. Some were laughing, some were crying, some were angry, and some were worried. All of them had different expressions, and they were emanating waves of bizarre energy that could stir one's heart and soul. After devouring 50% of the soul energy emanating from the innate soul essence, Wu Qi poured the remaining 50% into the 7 little gods and devils. Later on, he would need them to exert more strength, so he needed them to eat and drink their fill first. As the innate soul essence was destroyed by the divine flame of order, the clump of earth element energy essence lost its controlling core. The rapidly spinning earth element energy essence became weak and lifeless, slowly condensing into a yellow clump of soil the size of a human head. Apart from being extremely heavy, this clump of soil did not have any energy fluctuation, and it looked just like a lump of soil that could be found anywhere on the ground. With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi forcibly exercised the energy meridians of 5 elements, carefully forcing out a drop of clear green liquid from 2 false cores, glinting with a 7-colored gleam. It was a drop of innate nectar that Wu Qi had spent a lot of effort to condense in his false cores, and now, Wu Qi was using it in a very extravagant manner. He had forcibly absorbed over 100 human immortals' gene Dan, and only then did he manage to condense a drop of innate nectar in each of his false cores. But now, for the sake of this innate earth element energy essence, he had used 1/5 of all the innate nectar in his false cores. With his heart bleeding, Wu Qi kept dripping the drop of innate nectar onto the earth element energy essence while murmuring under his breath, "What a waste, what a waste." The cultivation base is the foundation of one's cultivation base. If this drop of innate nectar were to fall on someone, it would be more than enough for an ordinary man to break through to the realm of Mahayana realm of Jin Dan. What a waste, what a waste. If not for the fact that you are an innate earth element energy essence, I would not be willing to waste it like this. As soon as the innate nectar of wood element fused with the earth element energy essence, the extremely heavy and hard earth element energy essence suddenly became as light as a feather, faintly rippling like water. Without any hesitation, Wu Qi quickly took out the 36 dragon scales given to him by Catfish Flood Dragon, as well as 3 large vats of original dragon blood essence stored in the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. The divine flame of order burned fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, the dragon scales were melted into 36 dragon scale-shaped golden beams. Without caring about anything else, Wu Qi shoved over 18,000 kilograms of original dragon blood essence into the dragon scales. The 36 dragon scale-shaped golden beams absorbed all the original dragon blood essence, then abruptly unleashed a blinding light that caused Wu Qi's mystic eyes of universe to feel a severe pain and nearly blinded him. Even a single drop of original dragon blood essence contained an enormous amount of energy. With over 18,000 kilograms of original dragon blood essence being injected into the 36 dragon scales in such a luxurious manner, and after being purified by the divine flame of order, the quality of these 36 dragon scales had been greatly improved, making them almost comparable to the dragon scales taken from the body of a divine dragon of heaven immortal realm. Forcibly exercising the energies in his body, Wu Qi coughed out 3 mouthfuls of prime blood essence in one breath, causing the flame of the divine flame of order to rise abruptly, swallowing all the water-like earth element energy essence and the dragon scale-shaped golden beams. Quickly, Wu Qi performed incantation gestures with both hands, casting out all kinds of defensive and offensive runes that he could use according to the script of ancient law. The energies in Wu Qi's body were being consumed at an incredible rate. Every time he cast out a set of runes, his energies would be completely depleted. At this point, he had no time to think too much. From the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, he took out the demon cores of those powerful demon beasts collected by Ying Zheng and shoved them into his mouth, using the powerful energy contained in them to continue forming runes. After 24 hours, Wu Qi had consumed 36 powerful demon cores in a row. Suddenly, a strong light flickered and flickered in front of Wu Qi, as an ancient-looking, pale golden wrist shield appeared in front of him. The wrist shield was not very big, measuring about 1 foot and 2 inches long, which was the length of an arm. Its width was 3 inches, which was the width of an arm, and its thickness was only half an inch. 36 dragon scales formed a perfect formation of 9 halls and 8 trigrams on the surface of the shield, and countless runes could be vaguely seen on the surface of the wrist shield. The edge of the wrist shield was extremely sharp, and the dragon scales were emitting a bright gleam that could make one shudder. Waving his left hand, Wu Qi fastened the wrist shield onto his left arm, then injected a little bit of energy into it. Immediately, a thick and heavy yellow light enveloped his entire body. The sword of Greedy Wolf was thrust out along with a jarring whistling noise, brutally slashing onto the yellow light. The sword was knocked far away, but the yellow light did not budge at all. Wu Qi nodded his head satisfyingly. Judging from the defensive strength, perhaps even an Earth immortal of nascent soul realm would not be able to break through it. Then, with a twist of his wrist, 36 Earth yellow dragon scale-shaped beams shot out from the wrist shield, piercing through the air and shooting in all directions. He scanned these dragon scales with his divine will and found out that each of them contained a great amount of Earth element energy. Each of these dragon scales weighed about 50,000 kilograms, and their edges were extremely sharp. With such weight and sharpness, even an Earth immortal's Dharma body would not be able to withstand the attack. Wu Qi smiled. With his current cultivation, it was not easy for him to be able to refine such a magic treasure. The true form of Earth element energy essence still existed, and when his cultivation base reached a higher level in the future, he could refine this wrist shield again, and it would still be a pretty good innate spirit item. Although he would have to find an excellent soul essence to be the item spirit at that time, that would be a problem for the future. From now on, you will be the Earth element dragon scale shield, and my life will depend on you to protect it. The innate gold and silver lotus is not very popular, so I'll have to rely on you more in the future. Waving his arm, Wu Qi retracted the silver lotus and the divine flame of order. A vast auspicious light burst out from the black dragon spirit ring, as Wu Qi released the chariot of 8 horses. With a fiery gaze, he stared at the item of virtue of human emperor. It was time for him to reclaim it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.